Say trust the screen, let the future begin. Banjo in the boardroom, black glass shine, selling us a watchtower line by line. Maps in the cloud and a badge in the feed. Every light up lie, every want, every need. Wallets and rumors in the cold machine, counting our lives from the county to the screen. But the wires get loud when the masks come off. Every hidden thing starts to cough. Pigs can't say underground. Pigs can't say when we shut it down. Pigs can't say underground. We move like sparks they never find. Pigs can't say underground. Names on the bridge and paint on the wall. Boots on the tracks when the black fans call. If they want our data, let them choke on dust. We were born in the underpass, built for the rust. Hear that hum, that's their fear. Every small town lie, cracking clear. Pigs can't say underground. Pigs can't say when we shut it down. Pigs can't say underground. We move like sparks they never find. Pigs can't say underground. Let the screens go blind, let the sirens bend. We don't kneel to the feed, we don't play pretend. From the tunnels below to the valley floor, if they build a cage, we build a door. Pigs can't say underground. Pigs can't say when we shut it down. Pigs can't say underground. We move like sparks they never find. Pigs can't say underground. Underground, ground, 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 ground. Underground. Pigs can't say underground. Pigs can't say.
Goddamn right. All right. I fully autismed for the preparation for this episode. So I hope that you hellions appreciate this. All you Korra whores, all you folks out there in the wide world, all the ships at sea, all the true crimians who love to know the deeper stuff. Here's what's going to happen here, okay? You're going to witness me full autism rabbit holing, okay? I have way more information than I want to present about this situation with how Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes allegedly, everyone is to be considered at least legally innocent until proven guilty. Everybody should, everybody should consider everybody innocent all the time, apparently. A lot of it's going to be very insensitive because like my human element has been turned off for like 2 days since I stumbled onto this and went, what? And then ran up the flagpole, and everything about like the Klan and the and the Mormons and Big Brother government, MAGA, come back around. There's a lot to do with with Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files. This rabbit hole went so deep, and everywhere you looked, it was like the thing you suspect. It's like, oh, I suspect this is a thing, and then I go and I run up the flagpole and somebody's like, yeah, that's the thing. You didn't know? And it's like everybody has little bits and pieces of this information about this story. So yeah, let's begin. Some of it's going to feel a little disordered, a little disorganized. We're just going to get into it. All right. Hope you guys liked that opening song. I thought that was pretty dope. Spun it off completely as AI generated it. I put more effort into the songs that are actual hymns of the Church of Korihor. Trust me on that one. You don't have to. I don't care. I'm going to bring in a little bit of another website here. Again, my English is not great because I'm like, again, on full autism mode. I tried to medicate, and but I had more research to do today, and so then I took a nap. And so what's going to happen here is you're going to witness me achieve full talking human status at about the part where I'm too loud and talking too fast, about 1 hour from when I took my Adderall, which was about 30 minutes ago. And that's where things will be most coherent. So just like stick around. The rest of the time, it's going to be a little bit. You can you have my permission to laugh. It's going to be a little bit funny how I'm not going to speak very coherently, but I'm going to show you some freaky things. Just a trigger warning. Tonight we're going to be talking a lot about racism. We're going to be talking about Tim Ballard, which means we're going to have to talk about sexual violence stuff, and including related to harm that adults do to non-adults. And so, like, if that's not a thing for you right now, if that's like something you can't handle right now, it's totally acceptable to just like walk away right now. But we're going to start with a story about drugs. And it's going to get freakier from there. We're going to start with something that's actually even more out of the blue than that, though. Okay, so this is a website I just found today for a law firm called Overson and Budgeon. Don't know anything about them, but they had this great website. And this is, again, the tangents in this. The tangents are legendary. Let me just read it to you from my notes. You read it. But this is mostly, you can see that this all comes from this thing. And I'll put this in the show notes, the actual link to the content here. Yeah. So anyways, latest development. Stingray device warrants and Department of Pre-Crime. So this is an article from Overson and Budgeon PLLC. It says many times officers will fail to comply with the requirements to get a warrant to track your movements through your phone in hopes that you do not know the law well enough to challenge their authority. They're selling you, by the way, their legal services. It doesn't matter. This is important for this story. It'll become more clear as we go. They may claim that exigent circumstances existed that made it necessary for them to act quickly without a warrant. This is where the services of a skilled Salt Lake City search and seizure defense attorney, like those at Overson and Budgeon, can help protect your rights. If the officers fail to get a warrant, claim exigent circumstances when none existed, or go outside the scope of the warrant granted them, a lawyer can file what is known as a motion to suppress. A motion to suppress is argued before a judge, and the defense will ask the judge to suppress any evidence obtained as a result of an illegal search procedure. I'm going to just stop right here and just kind of like explain what I just explained. I'm just going to say what I just said, because this is going to become so important. This is going to become the takeaway, okay? So basically, do you know what a Stingray device is? A Stingray device is a fake cell phone tower. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, sis. A Stingray is a fake cell phone tower that takes all the cell phone data in its range. That it's small enough to fit in a car. And the police can take it around and have all the cell phones basically in the area. This is just my understanding of the tech, which could be wrong. And everybody's phones will ping that device like it's a cell phone tower and convey a shit ton of data from your phone to that device. Now, to use it technically, once upon a time, it was just like if they felt there was probable cause, they could just turn it on, and boom, they're collecting data off of everybody's phones. This is within the range of this device. And then they passed a law saying, well, no, you have to get a warrant, unless it's an emergency. This is just my understanding of the law, and I could be wrong. I'm not an attorney, but the more I read into this, the more I went, the fuck, what? What? What's this? And it's like, yeah, they can just basically turn it on. Now, here's the wild thing. Now there's a law saying that they can't just use it without a warrant unless there's a circumstance. There's a backdoor to the policy. Unless there's a circumstance where they're like, well, we had to do something. And what qualifies under that, only an attorney can really say in a court of law. And then it's up to the judge whether or not that is the case. But here's the thing. By that time, whatever they found out, wherever they got from that device, that's already happened. Now, technically, you can keep it from being used in court, but what difference does it make? Unless you're doing actual crimes, in which case, okay, don't do crimes. No, right? Yeah, nobody should do crimes. Let's all abide by the law, but at that point, your privacy has been violated, and whatever the people who get to your phone, if they wanted to do something to hurt you, you just can't stop them. I mean, you basically just can't stop them. And so it's like the only thing you can do is get a fruit of the poisonous tree ruling in that whatever evidence they produce using this device. And it's like freaky, man. I mean, that freaked me out because here's the thing. I'll tell you why. And I'm just going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to tell you why that freaked me out. I don't know if you saw this, but like yesterday, there was a woman who got sentenced, or a woman got a woman from American Fork, Utah. It's dangerously close home for me. I've lived in American Fork forever. I'm not there now, but I mean, yes, I am. And this woman was found guilty of unaliving. I'm just going to run the risk, you guys. She was found guilty of murder because she made a wisecrack in text messages. She made wisecracks with her kids, her adult kids, her son and daughter at the very least, about how much she hates her son-in-law and wishes that her son would just do him in and just make a bunch of wisecracks about it. And then her son apparently was doing, I'm summarizing this from my notes from like 48 hours ago, which might as well have been a year ago. And then her son was not sober, and his brother-in-law, his ex-brother-in-law, shows up at the house, and ex-brother-in-law is with us no more. Apparently, he was an abusive jerk, but he wasn't aggressive in the moment, and so it wasn't self-defense, and so this woman's son goes to prison. He's been sent to prison. And while he's in jail, apparently he had a text message. I'm not really sure how that works. Conversation with her, and it got picked up by the police. And in the conversation between the devices, he had told her, I kind of blame you for this. And she had texted back, yeah, I kind of blame myself. And now she's going to prison because she's the mastermind. It's a dangerous world, man. And that's what we're here to talk about, because there's a freaky thing that happened in near the end of Operation Underground Railroad, Sound of Freedom, Tim Ballard, Sean Reyes, right when everything hit its peak between 2019 and 2023, when it started just flying apart. There's a company at the center of all of it that was being sold as being literally with the phrase, it's Palantir but better. Better than Palantir. If you don't know, that's Peter Thiel's company. The billionaires are planning to get even more billionaire and trillionaire off of selling the government everything you do all the time. better than Palantir is anything but Palantir. But this company, Banjo, was pretty awful. Luckily, the guy who created it wasn't terribly good at code, apparently. Not that anybody noticed at the time, because he talked up a good game about artificial intelligence, which may lead us all the way over to Ken Krogh. I don't know. We're going to get into it. And I don't know. And everybody's innocent until proven guilty, etc. Okay, here we go. So let's go ahead and skip over it. Yeah, I already read that part. All right, here we go. Okay. Anyways, let's go back a little to 2024. A former Operation Underground Railroad operative. So this is just 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, right? Known for being Tim Ballard's like muscle. This guy was caught smuggling drugs from Mexico. And this is the story. Well, we could pull up a story here. There we go. Boom, boom. All right, check it out. Okay. You guys look at that. I'm going to read it from here. According to, so in August 2024, Rad Barrett, who was a former jump team guy for Operation Underground Railroad, he used to work basically, he was a guy, I guess he was an athlete. He'd gotten a concussion, and that made a lifelong career for him in orthopedics. And like he had like an MRI and like a neuro monitoring company, and did pretty well with it, made a good amount of money, apparently sold it all and joined Operation Underground Railroad right at the time. This is the way his story goes, but anyways, that's going way back. Okay, so that guy in 2024, obviously OUR is like basically not even a thing anymore. He's gone on to do other things with his life and whatever, but the guy's name is Rad Barrett, and he was one of these guys, pillar of the community guy in the whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps, teach a man to fish, and don't give him a fish, because the whole world. This guy was like held up as like a role model in the world, right? And he was a jump team guy. It's like, dude, bro, work out at the gym, whatever. And I want to say, what kind of gyms are they? Anyways, let's not make up any details here. So, anyways, he was basically swerving all over the road. Out over by Heber City, which is in Park City area. Interestingly enough, because a lot of the story ends up in Park City, actually takes place around Park City, kinda. And he was swerving all over the road. The police pulled him over, gave him a field sobriety test. There's mistake number one there, guy. And then they looked in his car and they found drugs and cash, particularly opiates. A lot of opiates and a lot of cash. Rad stated, this is from the KSL report that I think you guys are looking at right now, right? Everybody sees that? According to this KSL report, Rad stated that he travels back and forth from Mexico to the United States, and due to the large amount of medications and loose cash, according to the police, I believe that Rad is actually distributing these substances, police wrote in the arrest report. It was a few weeks later than this, that Sean Reyes, also from Operation Underground Railroad fame, former attorney general, was attorney general at the time, and Tim Ballard, dude bro, was exposed by his 5-year calendar. I actually may be getting that timing wrong. I'm sorry. We're talking about 2022. In any event, it's important. It's still relevant. This is according to a Tribune article, a review of 5 years of Reyes calendar records. Let me pull up that actual report while I'm here. I told you my autism hard for a bit of this. Stop screen. Share screen. I might vibe code an alternative to StreamYard just because StreamYard sucks so much at so many things when it comes to this. When it comes to how to pull up all the screens here. Did I have the link for the thing? In any event, I won't pull it up. Here, you're going to listen to me read it off. Anyways, it's all there. According to a Tribune article, a review of 5 years of Reyes calendar records. shows how the outgoing Attorney General spent his final embattled term in office, balancing the business of the state while spending time with a cast of minor entertainment figures and scheduling meetings with dozens of business executives, some of whom had landed state contracts. If Sean Reyes is supposed to be intimidated, okay, that the Tribune went out and exposed his business contacts, he really isn't in the end, okay? But he did sue Annie Knox, a reporter who managed to get the government to give her his calendar when she discovers that, oh, Tim Ballard basically was taking meetings with Sean Reyes, allegedly at Mac's place that we talked about before, right? It was a place where you can go. It's a bar where you can't get a drink, but apparently you can get a government contract if you're there to meet with Sean Reyes, if you're on his calendar and on his Outlook calendar. And it turns out that on his Outlook calendar was enough meetings with enough people, ranging from foreign dignitaries, celebrities, business leaders in Silicon Valley and the Silicon Slopes, and politicians, enough backdoor deals that he realized that if he was apparent that he realized he didn't want the Tribune to get access to that Outlook calendar. Just knowing who he was meeting with. Interesting side note: the day that the judge, so he sued, and Sean Reyes sued this woman, sued Annie Knox, the journalist, for getting getting access to his calendars, and the case got kicked up into court. I guess probably accelerated. It must have been accelerated, however, or whatever the term is, expedited, not expedited, but yeah. Anyways, and he got by the time the judge actually ruled on it, the legislature, which in Utah works notoriously slow on pretty much everything, had moved so fast on passing a law that says journalists can't just get access to a politician's calendar. That the day that the judge passed down the ruling on this case that says the law says that she can, so she can, and you can't just sue her for doing her job as a journalist. You're going to pay her attorney's fees. And Sean Reyes or the Attorney General, I guess probably the Office of the Attorney General, so I guess us, our taxpayer dollars, went to paying this woman six figures in legal fees because Sean Reyes had to try and throw a monkey wrench to keep this woman from being able to report on his calendar, just who he met with when he met with them. And turns out she was just looking to see how often did he meet up with Tim Ballard, now that we have like the accounts of Celeste Boris, for example, saying that, oh yeah, I used to, that basically allegedly, as is stated in the paperwork from the filings, the lawsuit, that Celeste Boris's executive assistant said, yeah, I used to meet up at Mac's place, this barbershop / penthouse / club in Salt Lake City, where he met with everybody, but where apparently Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad paid tons of money to keep the penthouse stocked with women and cocaine. I don't know. That's a very ungracious way to say it, but I mean that the way she said it was not entirely unlike that. But she's like women and coke, and so and so Annie Knox and the Tribune, as you would, and everybody else was like, who was he meeting with at this Mac's place, right? Well, it becomes quite interesting, to say the least. So, Sean, my understanding is, and I am not an attorney, and I am not even, anyways, my understanding is that Sean Reyes basically knew he wasn't going to win that lawsuit. He must have known he wasn't going to win that lawsuit, and that, so either he or the taxpayer was going to end up footing the bill for this woman's legal fees. And so, but it doesn't care. He just wanted to delay their getting access to who he was meeting with. And it turns out that may have been for pretty warranted reasons, because holy crap, it's like a mountain of crazy information. In any event, back to the story. This is the story. Welcome to Hellfire Agency. we're a mission of the Church of Korihor that promotes critical thinking through true crime. We may, if we get a chance, even take a look at a story that I just recently realized I haven't really released, and it has to do with Kaylin Louder. We should do it. We'll try to get through as much of this racist weird crap as possible, police state bullshit, as fast as possible, so we have time to go through some of my footage. I haven't even looked at it in a long time. So I'm not really sure where it is, but I'm hoping to get a chance to take a look at that and or a couple of other things that I think you guys gonna find wild if you're following any of my other stories. According to Tribune article, the Attorney General spent his final embattled term in office balancing the business of the state while spending time with a cast of minor entertainment figures and scheduling meetings with dozens of business executives, some of whom landed state contracts. Ishan, we already did this. A few days later, he flew to Qatar to watch the World Cup. That's soccer. Here in America, outside the world, outside in the real world, they call it something else, but who cares? It must be nice, jet setting around the world to go and visit with the royal family of a country that we apparently are allies with, and where they torture and torment gay people all the time. But he wasn't flying on the taxpayer dime, so apparently it wasn't anybody's business but his. Wait a minute. Isn't it though? Right? So he was flying courtesy of the government of Qatar, which I mean, honestly, that worries me more. I would rather he was going on a taxpayer dime, frankly. You're going to just go to the 2022 FIFA World Cup to watch the United States lose badly to Argentina and France and like everybody. Yeah. And then the excuse that was given was, well, and the Qatari royal family basically wanted a chance to thank him for consulting with them on the subject of how sports events like the World Cup cause spikes in human trafficking, which, as I understand it, from the very light amount of research I did on it, is the consensus is it doesn't. That people who traffic human beings, they do it all the time. They don't wait for a sporting event. They don't use opportunities like sporting events for it. They use opportunities that are much more mundane. Like, here's a community where XYZ happens, and they can take advantage of it. So it's like, anyways, the point is this. So the reason why he was even there was an organization called AGA, not MAGA, AGA. That's the Attorney General Alliance. And basically this organization exists as a bribe clearinghouse. This is my opinion. This is my analysis as an independent observer. The opinions expressed on Hellfire Agency do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Church of Korihor. This is what I'm telling you. You look into this Attorney General Alliance, and it's like everything about it will piss you off if you are a person who cares about freedom. But basically, this organization exists as a bribe clearinghouse for corporations and governments that might be getting investigated. And almost universally, the people paying for everything that this organization does are people who are being investigated in some state in the union. For them to basically get a cash grab and get their money's worth out of AGA, not MAGA, so that basically they can pay a small amount of money. In the case of Qatar, I believe it was ultimately cost them $500,000 for this organization to be able to basically give them unfettered access to over a dozen. I think it was like close to 24 state attorneys general. There we go. And Sean Reyes was one of them. The dues on joining this organization were like $50,000, I think, a year. and it's like $50,000, and it was like on a sliding scale. So like you're from a poor state, which is not Utah. It was like less. I think it was like $6,000, $7,000. But Sean Reyes, he's not at that. He's at that $50,000 level, which meant that he got invitations and special access to things like, hey, we're sending a plane to get you and take you to Qatar to come out to the World Cup, and then we're going to do a big hullabaloo, and you're going to meet a bunch of people, and that's nobody's business, none of your constituents' business, apparently, because this is like among the many things that apparently we weren't supposed to know about in Utah. It's freaky for me. I'm like, I don't trust. I have trust issues already, Sean. Apparently, Qatar paid like $500,000 for this to be able to blah blah blah. To be clear, the fact that Sean Reyes was asked to go to Qatar to consult on how Qatar could traffic children less is insane, considering that this is like the thing that Sean Reyes is notoriously bad at. I do have one question to ask about Sean Reyes flying to Qatar on Qatar's dime to the World Cup. And it's not, does Sean Reyes like soccer? Who cares? My question is, was he there to sell Qatar a banjo? If you know, you know. Let's take a look at this. Okay. We're going to go back now to 2019. Maybe I have a video to show. Can we watch a video? This is a little, sometimes I like to change things up just to kind of challenge myself. Am I frozen? Anybody freezing? Anybody else see me freezing? Lisa says my audio is good. On my video, my video's frozen. How am I doing now? That was like a couple minutes ago, apparently. Everybody see my hands moving? Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. I don't know why that is. We'll keep going. Keep on plugging. Keep on trucking. Let's play a video, shall we? I didn't plan on doing this. Sometimes I like to throw myself a little curveball just for practice. And just to shake things up. Here we go. Okay, yeah. Here we are. This one. This one. This is from a 2018 event that has to do with the opioid crisis. I want to show you something. I haven't reviewed this footage in a minute.
Through the back, and I looked out. This place was packed. Thousands upon thousands of high school students from around this state were here to engage about this problem, this epidemic, this crisis that we face today. How often do you see children engaging in something like that when it does not relate it to Snapchat or to Facebook? And these kids were engaged.
I'll say it before. I've said it before. I'll say it again. My favorite, this is snarky, this is sarcastic. My favorite stories that people tell are the ones that start with kids these days. The kids these days with their boop machines and their MTVs and their blah, 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 and their Beyoncés and their badonkadonks. Blah, 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 kids these days. But yeah, we're getting a full kids these days from Mr. Dude Bro with the long beard. If you can't see behind his beard, because who could? Majestic. Love it. If one beard to another beard, dude. You're full ZZ Toppin. Wish you weren't a Klansman. That was not great for me. One beard to another. One beard to another beard. Okay, dude. Don't racism. Don't stop it. He may have actually done. In any event, if you can't see behind his beard, because who could? He has a T-shirt that says banjo. That's it, banjo. And because this is the guy who started Banjo, which is a company that surveils, that provides updated surveillance systems for law enforcement that are upgraded with social media posts. And so basically they claim to be able to, in live time, not real time, because real time is too late. Live time, be able to use AI to track events, basically monitoring social media accounts and like pictures and videos and text that you post that people are posting on social media in time, more or less like traffic cameras. But instead of traffic on a freeway, it's traffic everywhere all the time. And yeah, that's right. That's right, Lisa. Fair on. Anyways, so this is Dude Bro, and he's there. He's been invited to talk about opiates, which is terribly ironic considering some of the stories that we have here to talk about today. But he goes in there and basically he starts talking. Well, let's watch a few
of
times.
hats in, and it's the hat I'm wearing right now.
So he talks about he's been in Mike Lee's office recently. This is in 2018, and they were talking about upcoming events. Now, if you don't know, here in Utah, they have a thing called Silicon Slopes, which is basically this is my analysis in my opinion. You have companies in Silicon Valley who get tired of paying people, programmers what they're worth, come to Utah where people will work, apparently, where people will slave away whatever wages they can get working for these Silicon Valley companies, and they call it the Silicon Slopes. And it's like a big event out here. They have a nonprofit organization, of course it is, that puts on an event, I think every year, basically, where it's just bringing together business people from all over the state and all over the country and all over the world to hear these companies, these technology companies, brag about how since they came to Utah, they don't pay as much in taxes as they did in California, and they can get people for a lot cheaper, and they could get houses for a lot cheaper, and they don't really apparently care that means that people who are from Utah don't have anywhere to live. That's not their problem apparently. So anyway, we'll get this. So let's remove this. So anyways, so that guy that you're looking at now, I've let the cat out of the bag a little bit. This is all going to wind up to this guy has held a secret for 30 years that he's been able to hold a secret because an FBI agent in 1991, when that guy, or 1991 or 1992, in the early 90s, an FBI agent, when that guy was 20, the guy you were just looking at, misspelled his name with an O instead of an E, Damien versus Damien. And because of that, when he, if you do a search for him in pretty much all the national databases and any kind of criminal background check, he wouldn't come up. But this guy pleaded guilty to a pretty serious crime back in the early 90s when he was just a kid. Oh, and by the way, confessed to it and pleaded guilty and ratted out all of his racist friends when he was serving in the Navy. That's all towards the end of the story, though. So in any event, so that's the dude you were just looking at. That's Dude Bro. Now, mind you, John Reyes had been really impressed with Banjo and its founder. This guy's name is Damien Patton, because Damien Patton had proven that his software could have helped law enforcement watch a child get kidnapped, presumably so that they could stop it. And in case you missed it, yes, they practice kidnapping a child. This is a thing that law enforcement does. It's not just unique to Utah. Like, they do this all over the country now. Basically, they don't have enough experience at actually saving children from getting kidnapped. So they practice doing it themselves to see if they are any better at kidnapping kids than they are at stopping kids from getting kidnapped. And it's called they call it child abduction recovery team, or no, response team, child CART. And do you want to see some cops practicing kidnapping a child to see if they know how to catch a cop kidnapping a child? Sure you do. And in the process, we're going to learn about another story that's related. Here we go. Right here, Banjos. That was so funny, Lisa. Lisa's so funny, you guys. We got Lisa. Lisa bite me with got the comedy, and I'll do the creepy shit. And I want to do the funny shit next time. Lisa, you do the creepy shit next time. I'll do the funny shit next time. Yeah, here we go. Sean, I have a file here that says Sean Reyes' office practices kidnapping a child. Here we go. Watch this. This is like, here we go. We got Mr. Man walking through a park. It's like looking over his shoulder, like, is there Tim Ballard? Is there Tim Ballard? Okay, we're going to kidnap this child. This one looks good. All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh, shit, Charlie horse. Oh, why did I park so far away? Oh, man. Pins and needles, pins and needles. Oh, hello. How are you doing? I just want to clarify in case this isn't clear. They produced this and put this on the internet. Like, this is them bragging about how good they are at this. And they're like, hello, how's it going? We're just waiting to take away a cop in a police car. It's not a police car. It's my Toyota Tercel. You keep your like muddy boots off the mat, you know? Oh, here we got the response team. They're doing God's work, quite obviously. I got our coffee, and we got a witness here. We're taking a statement. Maybe you should be, hey, guy, pull out your notepad or something and take some notes. Oh, you don't have a notepad? Take out your phone and like make a phone call. You're not just creepy detective looking and talking to a child. You're supposed to be actually doing work. Yeah, here we go. That's right. All right, take out your phone. Yeah, that's right. Oh man, we are serious high tech. This is the way we do this. So you say that we are better at kidnapping children than we are rescuing children from getting kidnapped? Really? And she's like, look at this girl is just like bored to tears. And she's like, is this really what happens? Like, if I got kidnapped, is this what would happen? And he's like, yeah, I'm just going to send, I'm going to get on my phone here. So basically, yeah. So if you don't know, attorneys general are basically always having to sell everybody on that. You know, we might not catch all the people who are kidnapping kids, but you know, just so that you're aware, we do practice to get good. We're trying to get good at it, and and the irony is that sometimes they even go so far as to like basically say, well, we haven't had an abduction in this state for like X amount of time. So that means we've gotten so good at it. And it's like, or you're not counting everything that happens. It's like, I wish that these abduction response teams, these experiments in having cops show us how they think kidnappings happen, which if you didn't see that, did you see that? Anybody miss that? Can we just do this again? I'm doing this part again. Okay. This is, and turn the volume on. This is how they think that kidnappings happen. Okay. Just once, I'd like to see one of these things happen somewhere where it starts out with, hey, mom, I'm home. You know, oh, you don't care. It's Thursday and you're still at work. Dad, what are you doing here? Froyo? Are you kidding me right now? Hell yes, I want to go get Froyo. What? A pillow? I don't need a pillow. All right. You have a pillow? I'll get a pillow. We getting Froyo or not? Don't tease me about the Froyo, Dad. All right. Okay. Go get Froyo. And then like somewhere during the car ride is like, that's mom. Are you going to pick it up? Where? Camping. It's a school night. Are you not going to talk? Ow. Ow. Why would you do that? And it's like an hour later. Now, you give them like an extra hour just to make it fair, just to make the timing fair. Okay, now, Sean Reyes, what do you do? Now you're going to need to tell me what you do, because this right here ain't it. This is some sound of freedom shit right here. Okay, this is people who sit here and imagine how kidnappings happen who have no idea how the real world works. This is how they think a kidnapping happens. Okay. I'm sure there are occasions where somebody goes, I'm going to go to a park in a suburban neighborhood where everybody has cell phones. And all these white people who have like 6-figure salary jobs and drive cyber trucks, you know, are as soon as their child is out of hearing for like 10 minutes, are calling the police. And I'm going to go and grab one and just drag them across a crowded park, screaming their head off. These are the worst kidnappers in the world right here. Okay. And here in Utah, kidnappings happen. They happen all the time. And generally it is, you know, like recently, a much more apparently more realistic case is mom loves her kids. The kids love mom. She's from Croatia. Your kids are in Croatia with their mom, and or you know, this is a thing that like just happened, and so it's like it did this right here. Sean Reyes and sundry attorneys general from around the world. If the case is not clear, it does not instill us with a lot of confidence that you think this is how this happens. In any event, while we're on the subject. Oh no, that's a different video. Let's watch this other video. Yeah. We're gonna watch another video. You guys like watching videos here with your favorite horror, right? We're getting to the point I can feel it in my brain. I'm getting to the human part of it. You're gonna see me transform into a human. It might be very subtle. Sometimes it can be very subtle. Here's why this is important. And we're going to use some hot buzzwords here. I'm not going to. I didn't take time to edit any of these videos because there's so much. So you're going to hear some words that might not be entirely platform friendly. If we drop off the platform that you are on, I'm just going to come right back up. So don't go anywhere. Just come on back in case we get kicked off the live.
Off and on in the home there, and
okay, so this is this is going to be sensitive. If you're sensitive about harm to children, be prepared for this. That's as good a trigger warning as I can muster at the moment.
Utah County Sheriff.
Okay, of course, this is going to come back to Utah County Sheriff's Office. In any event, this is the story.
Utah Assistant Attorney General has been arrested and accused of possessing child pornography. Utah County Sheriff's deputies served a search warrant on 66-year-old Gary Lee Bell's home yesterday after receiving a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children back in May. They arrested him on suspicion of 6 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor.
Yeah. The footage you just saw that I just showed you of the police practicing kidnapping a child and then trying to test their system. I'm trying to be fair here. What they're trying to do is figure out how long it takes their system to, if they're not in control of all the elements, to figure out that somebody's been kidnapped. And so like while they were practicing that, this guy was working right underneath Sean Reyes at the Attorney General's office. And it wasn't until 2022 that they pressed charges against him because a national database flagged him and said, you realize this guy who worked as a prosecutor in the Attorney General's office under Sean Reyes was at the start, they got him on, he possessed CSAM. You guys know what CSAM is? You just heard what it is, okay? He possessed it. That was the opening of what became what you're going to see here. And we're going to get off of this subject as quickly as possible because it is dangerous. So, okay, let's listen to, okay, so here is, this guy actually works for the sheriff's office. I've pissed them off enough recently, and I am more convinced than ever. I might be a little bit paranoid, but I'm more convinced than ever that they actually are listening to what I have to say. The fact that the whole Laura Amy thing still has me a little bit thrown, but in any event, so apparently Sean Reyes was advised, we know that this guy who worked for you before he retired was acquiring in some way and holding on to CSAM. And this guy worked his job at the Attorney General's office was to prosecute and to protect, to work in services protecting children. That was his specialty. That's like his job.
He works specifically.
Okay. So at this point, they know, at this point, Sean Reyes' team at the Attorney General's office knows that if this database has flagged him, the media is going to know. So I'm making assumptions here. I fully admit that that's just my assumption. Okay. And so then they immediately claim a conflict of interest. I wonder, and this is going to get really bad here in a second. Conflict of interest, they can't investigate it themselves. They have to hand it off to somebody else. The guy lives in Utah County now, I believe. And so they hand it off to the Utah County Sheriff's Office to investigate. And so that's why you're about to hear what you're about to hear.
Specifically in the Child Protection Division.
There was some concern because there are grandchildren who are cared for off and on in the home there. And at least for now, a judge has determined that he is to be held without bail. That could change in the future, but for now, he's being held without bail.
The Utah Attorney General's office told Fox 13 News Mr. Bell deserves his day in court. He is innocent until proven guilty.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's just accelerate here because I just went ahead and recorded the screen on a Floodlit article. Basically, you're looking at, this is our man right here. His name is Gary Lee Bell. He is LDS, not a surprise there. Is there another? Here we go. Okay, good. Damn. Let me see if I can get into a bigger screen so it's easy for me to just read it right off the screen. No? What happened to the stupid button? I swear this software is. You guys should see what I'm looking at here. It's disgusting. How do we do this again? Why can't I just go full screen? Go full screen if you're gonna. This software sucks. Okay, we're gonna try with this. Okay, Gary Bell, 1958, was an LDS church member, former prosecutor, blah blah blah, pleaded guilty in December of 2022. In 2023, he was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. I can't see everything because this. I really probably should have just pulled up the actual page on Floodlit. If you don't know, Floodlit is a nonprofit organization that just exposes predators, especially in the LDS church, which is disturbing when you go and look at it. Just be forewarned when you go and look at it. Gary Lee Bell was married in Salt Lake Temple in 1986. From 2008 to 2020, Bell worked as an assistant attorney general at the Utah Attorney General's office in the Child Protection Division. In 2020, Bell resigned from the Attorney General's office after allegations of misconduct because CSAM had been found on his computer at work. Now, grant you, a lot of people get caught with dirty things on their computer at work, like surprisingly, a lot. When you're a prosecutor at the Attorney General's office whose job is protecting children, it is disgusting and on such an alarming level. And yet it gets even darker. Let me just see if I can get down to the rest of this. I might have to remember this because this software is so bad. Okay, here we go. Oh, I actually have the article pulled up. Do I have the actual article pulled up? I may vibe code a whole system just so that I can actually do real broadcasts because this software is such balls. Anyway, I'm gonna have to relate it to you because StreamYard sucks balls. and is then not in a good way. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to tell you the story. So basically, this guy Gary Lee Bell, they found CSAM on his computer at work in 2020 while he was working for Sean Reyes' office. They put him on leave with pay because he was found with this material on his computer, and then he resigned, and that was it. That was that, and that was going to be the story until he started taking pictures. A couple of years later, it was found that they found a national database that was investigating him, and then they found out by investigating, getting a warrant, and actually going to his home, that he had with at least one child, he had done lewd acts with this child. Was a person under 14, legally speaking, according to their reporting. My understanding, it was a very young person, and he photographed himself doing it. And then who knows what beyond that. And then it turns out he'd had a pattern of this kind of behavior of some kind dating back to 2020, at least, when he was put on administrative leave. That's when, with pay, that's when they found out, oh, this guy who worked for 12 years in the Attorney General's office was basically fired, not fired, soft fired, because they knew he had CSAM on his work computer. And Sean Reyes' office is like, hey, Utah County Sheriff's Office. And Mike Smith's people are like, what the? And then like nothing really was happening with it for like the longest time until finally the media was following up close enough on it that they basically had to crack down on it. Nobody knows how long this guy was getting away with it or how much harm he did. And this was all under the nose of Sean Reyes, who supposedly has this gift of discernment. Let me just pull this up here. Yeah, here we go. This is from the KSL article. When we started looking at cases where they involved digital data, this is them explaining why they delayed on prosecuting the guy. When we started looking at cases where they involved digital data, any sort of data, or several devices, or even some particular devices, we can't just open those up and with a couple of keystrokes see what it is that's on there. He explained. This is Moffat, the guy from the sheriff's office, I think. Most of these files, without getting into the nitty gritty of things, a lot of them are protected. A lot of them are encrypted. We also have a search warrant process we have to go through, which is wild because I just opened this starting out to explain to you that they can turn on, they have a Stingray device that the police have. They can just like walk down, they can just drive down any street, decide that they have, cause, reasonable, or what do they call it? That they have cause to turn this thing on, and it deceives all the cell phones in the area into thinking that it is a cell phone tower and starts collecting data off of them. And the law was written to prevent police from abusing this technology, saying that they can't do that without a warrant unless it's an emergency. But if it's an emergency, there's no process to say, oh, turn it on, it's an emergency, get information, then continue your investigation. There's only a process, basically, as a legal remedy or legal recourse to say, you use that Stingray device to get that information. What? No, you did use a Stingray device to get that information. And whether it's location data or whatever, cell phone data, text messages, whatever. And like I said, there was a woman who texted her kids a joke about unaliving her son-in-law. Then one of them did it. And then they text messaged each other while he was in jail. This is the way I'm remembering the story off the top of my head. Just barely happened this. That they discovered that all he did is say, I kind of blame you for this because of what you said in that joke. In that, because when I'm not sober, I tend to take things a little too seriously, take things too far. And she just responded with, yeah, I kind of blame myself too. And now she's going to prison. And it's like, all they have to do is turn it on. And then you have to prove basically that they got that information using this device, so that you can prove that's fruit of the poisonous tree. You can't use anything came out of their turning that device on, but you have to know that they turned that device on. And in addition to that, otherwise they have to get a warrant. I was watching this news report. I didn't capture it, but there's this news report that just came out where this journalist went through and said, these are the warrants issued by their warrant judge on turning the Stingray device on. And she just like takes a stack of warrants. It's just like, just keeps going and going and going. She's like, that's okay. You have to get a warrant to do it. They got a judge. That's basically all they do. That's, and so it's like crazy. Anyway, so that's where we are. So the state, we live in a digital police state. This is a personal opinion based upon my observation of things I see as being objectively true. And they've been trying to perfect the system so that they can actually use it. I do believe that in good faith, law enforcement, especially here in Utah, has been trying to prevent harm before it happens. That it's kind of Department of Pre-Crime, it's kind of like, how do you track this behavior when, and especially when a guy who works in the child protection department under Sean Reyes, who has the priesthood of God to be able to discern, and the gifts of the Spirit to be able to discern, because he was a Mormon bishop, by the way, that there, when somebody is a bad person, that guy apparently for years could have been doing, causing harm to the people he's supposed to be protecting, and nobody even inside of his own department knows it. And so, that's where we are with that. So Sean Reyes' story was that his office basically had conducted one of these carts, one of their regular child abduction response teams, and that they had used this software from Dude Bro that we were looking at a moment ago, Damien Patton, and his company Banjo, which is no more, or might be in another form. And who knows what's going on with that. I'll tell you what I know. You take it from there. And this company started by Damien Patton was they had used this company Banjo, and they said they were able to reduce the amount of time that it takes to recover a child abducted down to mere minutes as opposed to hours, even though it took them. Apparently, they spent all day getting through the process all the way down to arresting one of their own, who is just an actor. They use some that are like, some people, I think there are volunteers, some are paid actors, and then some are just police who are, this is your job today. It's a field trip for them. I don't know. That's what I understand anyways. I may be getting that wrong, but basically you have law enforcement personnel, and then you have supplementary personnel brought in, and it's a day of practicing. How long does it take to get these to rescue a child who's been abducted? If somebody comes by and picks her up in a busy park or something. Oh, in this case, in 2019, when this one happened, they practiced a girl being abducted at a bus stop. So, in any event, so they practiced that, and he said he was really impressed with Damien Patton and his information. I have to try very hard not to say Damien Moore. One of the people who's done a lot of writing and reporting on these issues is Damien Moore over at American Crime Journal. I'm just going to give you a little peek behind the kimono. One of the reasons why I get such good research is because I know Damien Moore, and I talk to him, and he is amazing. I have to give him credit. Between Damien Moore and Merrill, I get like shit tons of fantastic information. So we'll bury that. Nobody talk about it. Nobody say those names again. Anyway, but it sometimes confuses my brain because I want to say Damien Moore, and he's the good guy, and the guy we're talking about, who actually may be a pretty good guy in the end. I'm just going to preface that. I know that's weird to hear, but Damien Patton, I think, actually is trying to get his life in order and become a better person. Unfortunately, he knows Tim Ballard, and I can't unsee that and can't forget that. Anyways, so they were so impressed with how Damien Patton's technology was able to help them unabduct a child they abducted, that they had to go forward with him. And then the next, they had to find out more about what it would take to get all of Utah's law enforcement agencies all under one umbrella contract with Banjo for 5 years to basically pay Banjo $21 million of taxpayer money so that they could use this software that would collate all of the traffic cameras, all of the 911 calls, all of the dispatch calls for the entire state of Utah into one software that also was tracking social media posts and using artificial intelligence to find events that it could flag by just watching and looking at it and saying, this is here, this is there, this is here, this is there. And if there are enough factors turned on for that might be actually a crime going down, then it starts recording it. Or then it's basically recording it all, is my understanding. It's recording all this information and then deleting it and recording it and deleting it and recording and deleting it, which is like the holy grail of these surveillance systems. Is how do you do this without violating the constitutional rights of the people who live there? How do you surveil everything that they do all the time and just have the computer watch it without any human input and getting involved until there is an automated system that flags it and says, okay, there's enough information here, enough factors to be able to say this is that there's a crime going down. Sorry. I really hate this software. I'm full on frustrated with the software right now. Sorry. Here we go. Oh, I love this, Huggy Bear. Thank you for getting involved in this. Aerial recovery is definitely on my radar. If you have any information about aerial recovery, I'll take it. I've been tracking a few things on them, but it's fascinating. And I am very much. Oh, I didn't know that had to do with Argentina. Huggy, is there someplace we can talk? Get me more info. Spencer Cannon quit. You guys get me good info. Why are we not talking somewhere else? When the app goes live, we're going to have long conversations, you guys. We're gonna have good conversations. The Corridor app is going to be legendary, guys. I'm getting back into it now. I had to take a little bit of a break for financial reasons, but I'm going to get back into it. Anyways, so here we're going to keep going from here. All right. So the TLDR basically on Sean Reyes and Banjo comes down to this. Okay. So the 2019 cart, that wasn't true. That story was bullshit. It seems to me anyways. Here's how it really happened now that we have the calendar. Now that Annie Knox was able to get the calendar and there was some good reporting on this. Let me pull up the reporting in the Tribune. I did have that KSL story pulled up. Wait a minute. Let me close this one. Don't need that. Anyways, we'll just keep going from here. Basically, this is what happened. So Sean Reyes would meet with business people, like I said, apparently oftentimes away from his official office at a place where dudes can wear their beards long, not order any booze, get their hair cut, and according to Celeste Boris, Tim Ballard's assistant, Tim Ballard allegedly hooked up Sean Reyes with women in booger sugar in a tit-for-tat arrangement to keep the law on OUR off of OUR's back and Tim's back. And that's according to Celeste Boris filing from the lawsuit that has apparently been thrown out in any event. But nonetheless, it did file. You guys, most of you probably saw it. and we've talked about it before. Everybody is innocent until proven guilty, and these are all allegations. But in any event, when it was discovered that some of the meetings, like the ones with Ballard, were apparently on the Microsoft Outlook calendar that Reyes' office kept for him, the press tried to get those calendars, and Reyes actually sued them to keep them from coming out, like I was talking about. Now, one of these, an appointment in 2019 that Annie Knox and the people over at the Tribune discovered was this meeting with this guy Patton, Damien Patton. I really wish one of you's got to change your name, Damien. When do you have to change your name? Okay, call one of you Weird Beard. Should I randomly select? Damien Patton, you are now Weird Beard. Okay, so Weird Beard. Nobody expected for Weird Beard to be involved in the Klan. Well, at least that I know of. But then I probably should have. In an article from the Tribune, let's see. Let me just pull up the link here. I spent so much time getting all these links put together, and it was just so much. It's just an avalanche of info dump. Anyway, in an article from the Tribune, take my word for it, one of the first meetings listed in the calendar invites took place in February 2019 with Ballard and Reyes meeting Damien Patton, the founder of Banjo. The company said it used artificial intelligence to sift through a massive amount of public and, once given access, state-held data, promising it could identify crimes before they are even reported to police. Very Minority Report vibes, getting that one, a little bit Matrix vibes. Good. That's the energy we're going for here. They are leaning into, that's what they want. Again, from the Tribune, Reyes' office initially bypassed the normal procurement process to give Banjo $750,000 sole source contract, and the company later won a 5-year, $20.7 million contract with the state, which, by the way, by 2022, so this is just 3 years later, it comes out the past about this guy, Damien Patton, Weirdbeard, and they cancel the contract, basically. They suspend it and then ultimately cancel it, which is a whole separate story in itself, how it goes from, okay, but that this guy is a racist and an a-hole, but does the software work? And basically, in the end, the reason that the audit, as I understand it, the reason why the audit actually terminated the contract or said to terminate the contract wasn't even that, well, the guy has this shady history. It was, no, the software doesn't work. It doesn't even work. It doesn't do what he claims it does. But in the process of trying, all of these super sketch things come up. So in any event, in March 2019, the calendar invites show a scheduled meeting with Patton and Clint Betts, the president and CEO of technology promoting nonprofit Silicon Slopes. And that's how he winds up speaking at Silicon Slopes. That wasn't the event you were just looking at. It was a follow-up event. But I recorded that in a separate video that I just haven't shown and probably won't show. They met for a follow-up to discuss how Banjo could be used to curb opioid addiction. The next day, Reyes and Patton were scheduled for another meeting with the head of Drug Enforcement Administration for Utah, Brian Besser, for another opioid discussion. Brian Besser, by the way, is, as far as I know, he's entirely clean, but he keeps coming up. He's a name that keeps coming up in these stories. He now lives in Colorado, as best as I was able to confirm, and he is retired from the DEA. Over the ensuing months, the records show Reyes had appointments to tour Banjo's headquarters in Park City. Again, Park City, Heber City, that area. Well, they kept coming up in this story, mainly because Banjo was based out of there, although their official offices were in South Jordan. Okay, whatever. Prep for a media interview promoting Banjo's technology and for Banjo to take part in a conference call with another Washington, D.C. based company with a similar product. Invites show Patton was scheduled for a meeting with the Attorney General's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force and the head of criminal investigations, a separate meeting with Reyes' lead investigators, 2 meetings with Reyes at the company's headquarters, and an appointment for Patton to accompany Reyes to honor the winners of a high school robotics competition. In January 2020, Reyes and Patton were scheduled to be in San Francisco, where Patton would be on a panel speaking to state attorneys general about how Banjo's tech could help combat human trafficking. The calendars make clear that Reyes was a major proponent of Banjo, regularly connecting Patton to people who might help elevate the business. And Crooks, that's the very ironically named assistant to Mr. Reyes, is a guy whose last name is Crooks. Tom Crooks, Tim Crooks, anyway, his last name, Mr. Crooks, said he and Reyes helped arrange tours of Banjo's headquarters for attorneys general from other states, likely the same group of the AGA, though I don't think that's ever confirmed. It's the Attorneys General Alliance. Then it all came crumbling down after it was reported that Patton, as a young man, had been a white supremacist who was the getaway driver for a shooting at a synagogue. So we're going to dig into that story now. All right. Basically, there was also something in there about, but I just want to just cover this real quickly because this may become a whole other story in of itself, depending on how my rabbit hole brain treats it. In this same article from the Tribune, I learned that Jeffrey R. Holland, the Mormon apostle, actually met with Sean Reyes, I believe, to talk about his national ID card for children software that he was promoting, software and or system that he was promoting, and that he actually gave Utah taxpayer dollars over to this company that provides these identity cards that are supposed to be designed to help prevent abductions. And in the process, by the time the media finds out that Sean Reyes has been paying our taxpayer dollars to this company and trying to convince people all over the world to pay this company, and even written to President Trump, whom he happens to know and revere, and gotten to try and get him to help push on Capitol Hill that everybody in the country, all of these states, the whole country should get on this, should be paying this company for these national ID cards. It come to find out that there's a nonprofit organization that does it for free. But they, okay. But I leave it there. Any event. So that's one thing. And apparently he had an appointment to talk with Jeffrey R. Holland at some point. Who knows if that appointment was actually filled? Where they were talking about that same system. Was the Mormon Church going to do it? Does this have to do with Gardy Marty? These are the questions that percolate in my brain while this is going on. Now my sources say that Operation Underground Railroad definitely used Banjo. I won't say which of my researcher friends said this to me, but said, yeah, no, this is just well known that Banjo was the system that OUR would use and claim to be able to track all of these things that were happening, all of these vulnerable children, and pull off successful operations. Allegedly, with at least one person on their team who may or may not have been smuggling drugs from Mexico at the same time. Who knows? Maybe that's only a recent thing. Maybe he just barely picked that up. Maybe it's because he needed money. Maybe it's, I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. But it's interesting that all the time, apparently, it does seem like Tim Ballard hooked up Sean Reyes to this guy and Banjo. And before we go into who this guy is, Weirdbeard, Mr. Patton, I find it interesting to discover, as I understand it, this guy's Tim Ballard's same age, and he grew up in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area, which Tim Ballard did also. I don't know. After a lot of rabbit hole digging, I don't know how Tim Ballard knows this guy. Maybe he met him at the same time that he was invited by Sean Reyes to this meeting. That's the earliest date that we know, except that from my understanding, by that time, by 2019, OUR was already using Banjo. And the guy, I don't think we'll cover this later. I'm just going to mention it real quickly. You remember the Boston Marathon bombing? That guy, basically, Weirdbeard said that he had provided the software Banjo to news outlets, to media outlets, after apparently it wasn't a good consumer product. Apparently they tried to sell it like at one point as a social media app where you could find out where all your friends were all the time. Turns out that's creepy as and who would want it? Who would want that? But it wasn't a great moneymaker. They got into selling news outlets that you could be covering stories better if you were watching all the social medias with all these other services at the same time, and it just didn't work great. Shall we say that? It just didn't seem to work great. I have a video of it not working great, by the way. Maybe I'll show that here later. If people say show that weird ass video with Banjo not working great, I'll show it. But basically, from what I read, this guy, Mr. Patton, Mr. Weirdbeard Patton, was saying that he basically had a crisis of purpose because they were using Banjo to cover the marathon so people could watch what was going on live in terms of like social media posts and things, and while people were moving, so you could follow the marathon. You could follow the marathon. And then they discovered after the fact that all the information that they would need to track the guilty party, you remember these guys, was all captured by Banjo, but nobody knew it until after the fact. And that caused him a crisis. Now, who knows how much of this story is true? But it caused him he caused him to take a break from work because he apparently worked a lot. Oh, by the way, I went through Glassdoor filings for this company, and it's startling. I have it on my phone. I didn't have time to load it up. But basically, you have tons of 5-star reviews that look pretty planted on Glassdoor. I don't know if you know about Glassdoor, but Glassdoor is supposed to be a way for for employees to rate their employer. And then it becomes like a place where, wow, this actually hurts our company because pretty much everybody hates their work. And so you wind up with a whole bunch of employees who suddenly feel very motivated to give a 5-star review about how much they love the CEO and they love the company and they love the blah, blah, blah. And so it's like this whole other economy of you're going to give us a 5-star review. You like your job, right? You're going to give us a 5-star review. Allegedly, I'm thinking this in my head. It's my opinion. It may not be true, but I read some reviews. And they're there counteracting the 1-star reviews. And the 1-star reviews of people working at Banjo, including after it closed its doors when this story that you're about to hear about came out, they closed their doors. Banjo did. And a company registered to the same address started up the next day called SafeX AI, which is like the most reassuring name I think I ever heard. But that's not even the whole of it. You're gonna go down the rabbit hole with me here in a minute. But basically, it's the same company, and it's SafeX AI that now, you look up Banjo's Glassdoor reviews, and the company that is responding and the company you're looking at says SafeX AI. So basically, they rebranded as SafeX AI, and it's one star review after another. People saying, if you don't belong to the CEO's family or his religion, there's no opportunities for you here. However, they do pay above market value. And a bunch of reviews that said things like, they expect you to work, including weekends, 24 hours a day. You are on call, whatever they want, whatever they need. And a bunch of reviews that said, at least a couple of reviews I read that said, this company doesn't know what it does, and it doesn't know what it's going to do now that everything has changed because our CEO left. Because in 2022, Weirdbeard Patton resigned, saying that he didn't want after the story that you're about to hear about. So, in any event, all of this is happening with this guy that, for all we know, I don't have anything other than suspicion. It is only my suspicion that the real reason why Sean Reyes is doing things like going to Qatar to watch Americans lose at soccer, is that he's selling foreign governments even software and services like what is now apparently SafeX AI. I don't know that for a fact. I'm plain saying I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying the reason why he sued to keep these 5 years of calendars from falling into the media's hands appears to be because of all the myriad number of companies, especially tech companies, that are supposed to specialize in preventing harm to children, that are, that exist in very varying levels of validity in terms of the claims of what they can do. And I'm just saying only the ones that I hear about or am reading about seem to all be pretty sketchy from what I understand, either overpriced or they don't really work. Any of it. Mike Lee is very, very close. Well, Huggy, you bring up some things, man. You bring up some things. Yeah. Let's just go into the story. let's read some of the story. Because this gets interesting. So, this is basically, there was a Medium article that came out and a Vice article that came out, and then some following up reporting on this, on who this guy is and how this all came to be. That this guy who had 30 years experience, where he had worked in the Navy, he had worked for NASCAR as like as a mechanic in like a pit. Anyways, yeah, no comment. Had worked in law enforcement, and including working as a crime scene investigator, and then went on to teach himself, according to his claims, and I have no reason to doubt it. Taught himself how to code. Went to Google with an early version of Banjo, where he signed up for a contest, one of these hackathon contests, where you could win a grant if you can show that you had thrown together some, new software. Because Silicon Valley doesn't have any original ideas. It's like Hollywood. It's like it's like the place where good ideas go to die. And then it's like, so they have to actually get people from all over the world to come in with their bright ideas and say, like, we'll give you Silicon Valley money if you'll come in and bring us, like, what are you guys coming up with out there? And he apparently won one of those competitions, got some money put together that eventually becomes Banjo, which apparently is now SafeX AI. And I don't know much information apart from what's reported in the media. But in any event, this article comes out about how, because of a simple clerical error of misspelling this dude's name, nobody knew for the longest time that he is actually when he was a young man, he was from California. He got picked up, became a skinhead, fell in with the wrong crowd, and that crowd convinced him to go to Tennessee to start up a new chapter of the Klan, and that becomes where all his trouble. That's where the trouble comes out. For 30 years, this guy has gotten away with people not realizing that that's him. Let's go ahead and open this up. Oh, do I do this one first though? I'm going to do another one first. No, let's go ahead because I've already got that set up. Let's just go with the story. Okay, so here's the actual thing. Okay, so here's the actual article. Oh, this is Park Record. For hell's sake, did I really close that? Did I close the actual thing? Anyways, this is a story about him resigning. Okay. Patton apologized for his past actions. This is in the Park Record. For his past actions after the publication of the 1-0 report. He has said he no longer holds racist views, characterizing them as abhorrent and indefensible. Look, I'm just going to say this. Maybe that's true. Okay. I feel for this guy in a weird way. I don't have any reason. I don't know him. I don't have any reason to like him other than to say, I generally tend to like to give somebody the benefit of a doubt. And I'm like looking at this going, okay, what if you were in this situation? And and you were like, am I allowed to be alive? Am I allowed to live? I made a mistake when I was 17 years old, and it's haunted me all my life. I've managed to get along without it, without people figuring it out for 37 years or whatever it is. And uh, you know, and I guess I'm just lucky that way, but I don't hold those views anymore. I mean, at the end of the day, can you see what's in my heart? Can you know whether or not I have actually quit being that guy who was just a vulnerable kid? And like I keep wanting to give him the benefit of a doubt. And then I read on. So if you're trying to give him the benefit of a doubt, just warning you, this may get a little wild for you. I am deeply ashamed, he says, of this time in my life, and I feel sincere remorse and deep regret for my affiliation with hateful groups whose actions and beliefs are completely despicable, immoral, and indefensible, he said in a statement in April. I am sorry to all those who I have hurt and offended, and understand that no apology will undo what I have done. For the last 30 years, I have worked to right this grievous mistake as a lost, misguided adolescent kid. Taking over for Patton is CEO is Justin R. Lindsay, who has been Banjo's chief technology officer. In any event, my understanding is that Glassdoor complaint about if you don't belong to the CEO's family or his religion, that there are no advancement opportunities at this company for you was while Lindsay was the CEO. I don't know that to be the case. Well, no, actually, I do know that to be the case. Yeah, the review I saw, that was from 2023. I'm pretty sure that was while Lindsay was the CEO, but they may have been talking about Weird Beard. In any event, I was hoping I had a link in here. Might have to pull up the actual articles separately. Maybe I pulled it up. Maybe I have it pulled up here in the thing. Oh no, that's a separate story. I'll just pull it up. Okay, it's in Medium. Thank you. I had all of this pulled up on my computer, and then I had to close that window. Okay, this is the story that pretty much broke Banjo as far as I can tell. I don't know that to be a fact. It definitely caused Damien Patton to resign. Who are you, Tabs? Okay, here we go. So this is an article. This is by Matt Stroud. I guess the channel or the blog or whatever it's called is called 10. 10. Wait a minute. That you should be looking at it now. Let me just double check, because sometimes it says we're looking at it. It's not. Okay. CEO of surveillance firm Banjo once helped a KKK leader shoot up a synagogue. Some documents reveal Damien Patton, CEO of SoftBank-backed Banjo, admitted to being a skinhead in his youth. In magazine profiles and on conference stages, Damien Patton, 47-year-old co-founder and CEO of the surveillance startup Banjo, often recounts a colorful autobiography. Okay, so I'm just going to skip on past this. Basically, like I told you, he grew up in Los Angeles. And says by the time he was 17, he was like, by the time he was 15, he was homeless. He'd run away from home. Apparently, I don't think he ever explicitly says that his mom passed away from opiate abuse. He says that somebody close to him passed away from opiates. It's a sad story, sounds like. And apparently, he had a father who lived in Hawaii, and that comes up here soon. But basically, juvenile delinquent, living on the streets, more or less. Who knows how much of that is true? But in any event, a hard life, and he fell in with the wrong crowd. And then that kicks off the rest of his story. But that's the part of the story he hasn't generally told people. I don't know. I mean, can you blame him? Sort of, sort of. If it were me, I'd lead with it. And I hate to say it that way, but because I don't know you don't know how other people handle things, right? And but if it were me, I would lead with, look, if you looked into my history, you'd find out that I had this checkered past. I'm not proud of it, but I don't like to hide it from people. I'm trying to do the right thing. I would lead with that rather than hiding it and getting and figuring out that, oh, I can get away with not mentioning it to people for decades, because when something like this comes to light, it's understandable that everybody goes, how could you just pretend like this hadn't happened? Over the years, it seems to me, at least especially from that 2018 video that I showed, just a quick flash of, it seems like he would say, I grew up, I was homeless for a while, and I got into some trouble that results from living on the street. He says that I used to eat out of dumpsters, just doing whatever I could, and I just fell in with a bad crowd. But he never says the rest of this story, and it makes a difference. I mean, this is the kind of thing that you don't want people to find out after the fact. Let me just make sure you guys are looking at what I'm looking at. Yeah, okay, good. With his long red beard, flat brimmed baseball cap, and a penchant for motorcycles and off-road vehicles, dude fit right in at Max. That's like Max Place to the max. Patton strikes a hardened, gritty profile among the hoodied techies of Silicon Valley. Patton's story and public persona are compelling. They are also incomplete. Documents available to the public and reviewed by 1-0, including transcripts of courtroom testimony, sworn statements, and more than 1,000 pages of records produced from a federal hate crime prosecution, revealed that Patton actively participated in white supremacist groups in his youth and was involved in the shooting of a synagogue. In an interview with 1-0, one of the people involved in that shooting confirmed Patton's participation. Patton has not previously acknowledged this chapter of his life in public. Like I said, he does say sometimes, or at least towards the end of this window, he did say, as I heard him at least once say, that he grew up, but as a teenager, he was homeless and he had a checkered past and fell in with the wrong crowd. But he doesn't get into this much detail, and it does feel super sketchy to me. So I feel like that's what they were getting at. In grand jury testimony that ultimately led to the conviction of two of his associates, Patton revealed that as a 17-year-old, he was involved with the Dixie Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. On the evening of June 9th, 1990, a month before Patton turned 18, Patton and a Klan leader took a semi-automatic Tech-9 pistol and drove to a synagogue in a Nashville suburb. With Patton at the wheel, the Ku Klux Klan member fired onto the synagogue, destroying a street-facing window and spraying bullets and shattered glass near the building's administrative offices, which were next to that of the congregation's rabbi. No one was struck or killed in the shooting. Afterward, Patton hid on the grounds of a white supremacist paramilitary training camp under construction before fleeing the state with the help of a second Klan member. Okay, so I'll just summarize a lot of this other stuff. There are a couple names that are going to come up here. Leonard William Armstrong is one of his associates at that time. Jonathan David Brown, who went to trial, was convicted of accessory after the fact to a conspiracy to violate civil rights, as well as two counts of lying to the grand jury. So basically, he ratted his friends out. One of them, this guy Leonard William Armstrong, went on to turn his life around, and now he's like an anti-hate group activist, or apparently is the way he's sold. And again, I think we all should hope that there is such a thing as redemption in the world. Otherwise, there's more reason for people to decide that I'm not, if I'm just going to get blamed for who I was or what I did in the past for the rest of my life and never have any opportunities in my life, why am I around? Why am I alive? And so I do try to give these people benefit of the doubt and say, well, if they say that that's not in their heart, that was because they were in a bad situation, they fell in with the wrong crowd, I tend to want to give them the benefit of a doubt and say, anybody when you're a kid who doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, or you're, somebody who, you feel low in your self-esteem and you need friends, anybody could get involved in anything, right? At the same time, I have this nagging, and this is entirely born out of my own bias, just me being aware of my own feelings on it. I have this nagging feeling, and many of you know, that people just don't change like that, and what happened next kind of leads me to lean towards, even if you've changed, there's some opportunities that just have to be, some doors that have to be closed to you from that point on after this. And I'm sorry to say that I do think it does have to be that way. Patton also admitted to participating in white supremacist talks and meetings where, according to his own testimony, speakers advocated for the elimination of blacks and Jews, among other beliefs around racism and religious disinformation, or religious discrimination, excuse me. They have this picture here. Hopefully you guys can see this. Oh shit. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a newspaper article from the Tennessean. You see what's on the wall here, and you see this guy over in the corner over here with his Roman salute up, sitting on the couch, which is not the way that was traditionally done once upon a time, by the way. You would normally stand at attention to do that. Not that anybody needs that information. My autism brain goes, okay, well, you're doing a bad thing. You're doing a wrong thing, and you're doing it wrong. That is our man, Weird Beard Patton. Okay. My phone? Apparently my phone has low battery. Thanks, I guess. We believe, so now here's the thing. You know what? I'm not going to read all of this. Okay, this is cool. This is interesting and important. Typos on records connected to Brown and Armstrong's case. First, a misspelling of Patton's first name, Damien, as Damian, in an initial affidavit of probable cause. Then, in subsequent filings, spelling Damien as Damian, Damian, have helped prevent the discovery of Patton's full biography for the past 30 years. That's where I look at this and go, okay, the reason why you didn't tell people about this is because you got away with it. Because of a clerical error of misspelling your name, because there are multiple ways people spell Damien. And apparently in the actual affidavits, they never spelled his name right. When reached for comment, Patton wrote, this is a statement from Patton. Good to actually have his answer. And I thought this was as compelling as he could make it. 32 years ago, he said, I was a lost, scared, and vulnerable child. I won't go into detail, but the reasons I left home at such a young age are unfortunately not unique. I suffered abuse in every form. I did terrible things and said despicable and hateful things, including to my own Jewish mother, that today I find indefensibly wrong and feel extreme remorse for. I have spent most of my adult lifetime working to make amends for this shameful period in my life. In my teens, I dropped out of school, lived on the streets, ate out of dumpsters, and raised money panhandling. I was desperate and afraid. I was taken in by skinhead gangs and white supremacist organizations. Over the course of a few years, I did many things as part of those groups that I am profoundly ashamed of and sorry about. Eventually, I was able to get myself away from this world while serving in the United States Navy. Again, this is where I start to look at him like, okay, the reason why this guy got away with things for so long. Would somebody who looks like Damien Patton, somebody who doesn't look like Damien Patton have had this same story? And maybe I don't know what I don't know. Surely I don't know what I don't know. But that's where I start to look at him like, this starts to sound very much like the story of a privileged young man who shouldn't have been in the Navy as soon as he was. So, or at all, frankly, and let alone go on to work in a crime scene investigations unit and work in law enforcement and then work providing software and systems to law enforcement agencies where where his system that he owns all the patents, or he at least was a guy who registered all the patents that Banjo has on its wall to impress and wow people with all this tech that he has developed for tracking everybody's information, who you are, where you are all the time, and what you're posting to social media all the time, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why. Again, this starts to get creepy to me when I think this is all coming from the mind of a man who admits that when he was a teenager, he belonged to these white supremacist organizations. And just, it's like, I want to believe you when you say, but I'm tracking who you are, what your demographics are, or whatever other information you're posting on social media. I'm tracking traffic cameras. I'm correlating all that data with 911 phone calls and all this other information to make up for what I did when I was a kid. And it's like, but you didn't tell people that that's what it was, which makes it feel like, do we trust you? And I don't think that you have much leeway to be angry or hurt or play the victim if somebody says, dude, this is all what we're finding out about you is that you had this past and then you hid it because you could. You hid it because of some factors of luck and some factors of frankly systemic privilege. That's what I'm looking at, and that's going to become more clear if we get a chance to go to the other article here. Since then, I have tried and failed to completely accept and come to terms with how I, a child of Jewish heritage, became a part of such a hateful racist group. One thing I have done through therapy and outreach, I have learned to forgive that 15-year-old boy who, despite the absence of ideological hate, was lured to a dark and evil world. To a dark and evil world. For all those I have hurt and that this revelation will hurt, I'm sorry. No apology will undo what I have done. I don't know him. That seems sincere. If that apology is sincere and that that confession that he has had to believe that he could forgive this wounded part of himself that is that inner child, that's the spiritual work that we do at the Church of Korihor. And so I choose to believe that it's possible. I do have that doubt that says, people don't really change that much. But at the same time, like I always say, if you're going to give yourself a reason to go on and to believe that life is worthwhile, you have to be able to say, even if change is not likely, even if change is never entirely clean, I have to believe that I can change. I have to believe that I can become better. So I'm willing to give him enough benefit of a doubt to say, well, apparently he hasn't done much or anything apparently in terms of getting involved with these hate groups since then. I don't know this person's whole life. I don't know. I barely know as much as I'm telling you. Apparently, the night shift started with my job. Not a job, but like, oh, hello. Just checking for emergencies. Oh, that was from earlier. Okay. We're good. So, if he's trying to make up for it, great, but why be secretive about it and why be aligned with the likes of Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes for it? I'm sorry, but that has to come into play for me. Banjo emerged out of 2 Bay Area hackathons in 2010. We've told that story. In May 2015. Oh, hold on. Yeah. In May 2015, SoftBank invested $100 million into Patton's Utah-based company. Other investors include Blue Run Ventures and Balderton Capital. Banjo now employs nearly 200 workers and maintains offices in South Jordan and Park City, Utah, Washington, D.C., and near Menlo Park, California. We essentially do what Palantir does, the lobbyist said. This is the lobbyist that he works with. So let's go and accelerate this whole story because we've done a lot of this already. Boom. Yeah. According to notes from Salt Lake Valley Emergency Communication Center's operations board meeting in the summer of 2019, a banjo lobbyist once compared the company to the secretive surveillance company Palantir. We essentially do what Palantir does, the lobbyist said. According to notes, we do it live. And a lot of this came from the stuff. So we're just going to look real quickly at the actual offensive thing that happened in his past. We're just going to look at it real quickly here. Yeah. I'm going to try and do this really quickly, guys. I'm trying not to beat you over the head and just read an article at you. Patton testified that Brown supported the work of the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, a chapter of the infamous hate group known for burning and bombing churches. The White Knights are best known for, you know what they're known for. We talked about on numerous occasions the execution of federal judges, Patton testified, and people who owned large newspapers like the man who owns the Tennessean and the Nashville Banner, the two daily newspapers operating in Nashville at the time. He basically, and I mentioned this before, he was basically recruited in Los Angeles, according to his testimony at the time, which he was 20 when he gave this testimony, and in the Navy at the time, that he was basically transplanted by these white supremacist groups that he was connected into to Tennessee, specifically to help them build a chapter of the Klan out there. So it seems surprising that they don't have one. Anyway, in testimony, Patton described the general philosophies and activities of the groups he associated with. Quote, we were out there on the streets causing problems and making headlines in the news, where the older groups like the Klan wasn't really heard of and ever heard of anymore, he said, and we were going out and causing the problems now. Eventually, Patton moved into an apartment that Brown helped pay for, and the two developed a friendship. At trial, Patton recalled he became more or less a father figure to me. At one point, Brown revealed to Patton that he'd acquired a farm in Pleasantville, Tennessee, which Patton told the court Brown hoped to transform into a paramilitary training ground, equipped with an arsenal of firearms. Quote, a lot of Christian identity speeches and a lot of speeches about how we've got to overcome the Jewish system that's running our government and how we got to take back our land. On the morning of Saturday, June 9th, 1990, Brown and his family took Patton to an Aryan Nations meeting in Smyrna, Tennessee, where believers of the Christian identity philosophy congregated. Hundreds of people gathered to hear racist leaders talk, Patton said. One of those speakers was Richard Butler, founder of the Aryan Nations compound near Hayden Lake, Idaho. At that time, Butler was the country's most notorious white supremacist. There were basically just the same speeches I'd heard over and over again, Patton said during the trial. A lot of Christian identity speeches and a lot of speeches about how we've got to go overcome the Jewish system that's running our government and how we've got to take back our land, et cetera, et cetera. So you get the idea. But I thought it was interesting that he specifically mentions in here, again, the thing that we heard in that interview with this guy who's the head of the national organization of the Klan now, did that interview with one of these Turning Point USA preachers. I forget the guy's name, who's out there supposed to be the replacement for Charlie Kirk. He's supposed to be the new Charlie Kirk, one of many who claim to be that they're the new Charlie Kirk. Why anybody wants to be the new Charlie Kirk, frankly, I mean, I understand why. I just don't understand why. Still don't think anything that happened to him should have happened to him or anybody else. But anyways, But you remember he had that interview where basically he spouted off everything that you read in the Book of Mormon in terms of the identity of people of certain ethnic groups, particularly um, people from Israel and the lost tribes of Israel, and that the Klan then and now believes exactly what Joseph Smith believed, and exactly what you will hear from other groups today is that um, people from Western Europe are the descendants, they believe, of the lost tribes of Israel, and this is why it matters that we're able to have a conversation about how some things don't happen in the real world. Everybody's truth is their truth. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on there, but he there everybody's sure has to be allowed their internal truth, their personal truth, as Captain Picard would say. But there's also objective truth. And it is objectively true that there are no lost tribes of Israel. This northern kingdom of the 10 tribes of Israel, they don't exist. It's not a thing. And that's not new. It's been known for a long time. There have been generations and generations now where people who read the Bible and study the Bible have the information that this whole story of the lost tribes of Israel being white people or the Aryan people, that it wasn't true, that it was something that racist people made up and reinforced as they taught the Bible. But if you deconstructed the Bible enough to know that that's the case, you might end up accidentally deconstructing the Bible to learn most of the things that the Old Testament claims happened didn't actually happen. Right down to there are now notorious biblical scholars who say, I was listening to Bart Ehrman, who was on Mormon Discussions just a few days ago, talking about how, they're almost certainly, if there was a Moses character, it's not the character you read in the Bible. Every person I know who is a biblical scholar worth their salt that I consider worth their salt will go as far as to say, if it's not a son of the Egyptian pharaoh, adopted son of Egyptian pharaoh in roughly 1500 BCE, then it's not Moses. And what we know is Moses actually evolved out of the worship of a deity from the Levantic region of the time. Joshua, we don't know. There's no confirmation historical that can account for who he actually was, who actually wrote his story. There's very little data from that time period. But when you line up the events of the Old Testament against the historical facts, against documentary and archaeological evidence, it's very clear that all these stories are legends and myths that came out of real events that happened. And very few of the events that are accounted for in the Old Testament are from real life events of historical events. The Babylonian captivity, which is really just more like a Babylonian, call it what you want, but it's more like an assimilation into the Babylonian Empire. You have all of these, these kings like David and Solomon and all of this stuff turns out not really a thing. Solomon's temple, I don't think that there's a definitive way to say that it didn't exist, but from what I understand, more or less the consensus is evolving that there was no Solomon's temple, that the second temple, Herod's temple, was the temple. Don't know that to be to be a fact, but from what I understand, the archaeological evidence that says that it's not, the fact that they did find like footings of what may have been the original Solomon's temple don't add up. That turns out it's a bunch of hooey. There's a whole bunch of false history, built into the story. But the point is, when people start to reinforce the belief that you can believe this book because it's the word of God, and you don't challenge the word of God, bad things happen, because the values of people who hadn't learned to employ the scientific method and critical thinking. Those values had to go away. They need to go away. And this is what happens when that doesn't get abided by. Let me get back on the story here. Okay. About 8 months earlier, a local Klan leader had sprayed swastikas on the West End synagogue located in the Nashville neighborhood of Cherokee Park, along with the statements, get out, and yeah, anyways. Well, we're riding close to the line of things that you can say. Rabbi Ronald Roth, who presided over Nashville's West End synagogue at the time, told 1-0 that the graffiti was part of a racist tide rolling into the community in the late 80s and early 90s. In a story published in the Tennessean at the time, Roth suggested that the graffiti was either a thoughtless teenage prank or related to an upsurge of activity throughout the country against Jews and other groups. The congregation's board members had worked to move past the incident, Roth said. Patton testified that Armstrong said he wanted to send another message to the synagogue's leaders. Patton drove his white 1986 Ford Crown Victoria past the synagogue with Armstrong in the passenger seat. Basically, then he took out one of the two pistols that they had, full automatic pistols, and opened fire on the synagogue. Around dawn, according to Patton's testimony, an officer from the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department knocked on Patton's apartment door for unrelated reasons, complaints about a car being broken into and an all-night party. Officers took Patton in that morning. He was subsequently released to Brown, who moved Patton out to the farm in Pleasantville, the farm that he was telling him about earlier. Given the seriousness of the incident, they said, "We hope that anyone with information will come forward," Roth had told the Tennessean on June 16, 1990. "Apprehension and conviction of the criminals will be a clear signal that Nashville will not tolerate such hateful criminal acts." Days after the event, Brown received a visit from FBI agents and Metro Police looking for Patton. They had an arrest warrant for Patton. One of them had to do with a violation of civil rights and desecration of a holy place, Patton testified. Brown and Patton hatched a plan to get Patton out of the state. They purchased 10 cans of black spray paint from a local Walmart and placed Brown's Tennessee license plates on Patton's car. Brown gave Patton $500, and Patton wore a pair of overalls, quote, to look more of a farmer or an Amish-type individual, Patton said. The authorities weren't going to be looking for a black car. They weren't going to be looking for that license, a Tennessee license plate, that they certainly weren't going to be looking for someone who looked like a respectable adult or an Amish person, a farmer. Patton and his girlfriend at the time fled the area and headed west. They spent a few weeks in Las Vegas and then moved into the back of Patton's mother's house near Los Angeles. But 5 months later, in the late fall of 1990, Patton returned to Tennessee. Undetected by federal authorities, he began working on Brown's compound. So again, this is this chance for this young man to start his life over. He's got his girl. He's living, apparently, according to his testimony, he's moved back into his mom's place in Los Angeles. He could go any direction in life. And the way he went was back to Tennessee to work for Brown. And now I understand that he was, you could say he was brainwashed. But the difference between brainwashed and convinced of something is really hard to say, psychologically speaking. I keep hearing these noises outside my window. And I've been doing enough conspiracy theory stuff to be weirded out. In any event, let's skip down to his part where he actually talks about how he got caught. But Patton does not mention that by his own testimony, he continued to socialize with. Oh, wait, no, here it is. Let me go back here. Patton and Brown had a dispute over wages, and Patton left the farm to live with Armstrong. That living situation didn't work for Patton either, Patton testified. So after Christmas 1990, he contacted his father, who was living in Hawaii at the time, which is interesting. His father invited Patton to join him there so Patton could get back on his feet. In early 1991, an 18-year-old Patton left Tennessee for Hawaii and then enlisted in the Navy toward the end of the First Persian Gulf War. In magazine interviews, Patton often begins his narrative there. That started out with he enlisted in the Navy and went to fight in the Persian Gulf War, and that much I can affirm. But I saw and read multiple accounts where he did this. Patton does not mention that by his own testimony. He continued to socialize with white supremacists while in the Navy. Patton told prosecutors that he gathered with skinheads while stationed in Virginia for training. I had known some of the skinheads there from prior rallies in Tennessee, and because of not knowing anybody there, I ended up meeting with them and hung out with them for some time, he said. Patton received a subpoena to testify before a federal grand jury regarding the West End synagogue event while he was still in the Navy, ultimately giving his first testimony in the case in September 1991. In addition to the shooting, Patton was implicated in at least one other hate crime that occurred during his time in Tennessee, according to an affidavit of probable cause filed by a Nashville area FBI agent in support of a search for Patton and his residences. Patton allegedly defaced the Greater Bethel AME Church in Nashville, an African American Methodist denomination. By his own grand jury testimony, Patton admitted to spray painting buildings in the area with KKK and swastikas. The affidavit also alleges that Patton also impersonated an FBI agent to uncover spies among the skinheads he associated with. Patton pled guilty to a charge connected with the synagogue shooting and did so, he said in a trial court testimony against Brown on August 12, 1992, in an effort to receive a more lenient sentence from the judge. Patton did not, as part of his conviction, receive any time behind bars. After an 8-day trial, a jury convicted Brown of perjury and accessory after the fact through a conspiracy to violate civil rights. A judge sentenced him to 27 months behind bars and 36 months of supervised release, in addition to a $10,000 fine. This is Brown, not Weirdbeard. According to Brown's Facebook page, he died on September 27th, 2016, of an apparent heart attack. Yeah. And that's pretty much everything, at least as far as we need to at this point to go over. But basically, he joined the Navy. Oh yeah, this is the part of it. Was I didn't download this whole thing, but this is the testimony of Damien Patton. You see here, September 19th, 1991. Like, this is like coming out of a one of these images. They show it coming out of a fax machine. Like, this is like an old photo. This is an old 1990s thing, a 1990s relic. Testimony of Damien Patton. You see they spelled his name with an A there, September 19th, 1991. And it does appear that it's mainly because they spelled his name differently, that when if anybody did a criminal background check on him, and we don't know if they did, and we don't know necessarily that it would have come up in a criminal background check, depending on their background checks and background checks I discovered recently. Because we do background checks for ordaining clergy at the Church of Korihor. And it's like, wow, it's shocking what doesn't come up unless you pay a certain amount, or, but if you misspell the person's name, and if it's misspelled by FBI agents, it's very likely it never comes up. It's frankly a fluke a matter of luck or incredible investigative journalism that Vice News had picked this up. We haven't even looked at that article yet, and found all of this information, and that 10 followed up on it, because frankly, because of that one thing, they were that one mistake. This guy's gotten away with hiding this for 30 years, and again, holding positions of high trust in society. Here's a couple lines from the actual testimony from 1990. What were we saying? 92? The question, well, why don't we stop right here? What is Christian identity? Answer, this is from 20-year-olds, I think. Weird Beard. Christian identity is a Christian philosophy that a lot of the white supremacists adopt. It believes that the white race is true Israel and not the Jews. Question. Okay, and you also mentioned, before we go back to how your relationship developed, you also mentioned the Ku Klux Klan. What is the Ku Klux Klan? Answer, the Ku Klux Klan is an organization of white men that started in the late 1800s, basically started after the slaves were freed, and today basically they're more political and they're out there trying to reinstill America of the 1800s. Are there different factions of the Klan? Yes, there are. What are those? There's about, I don't know how many, but there are quite a few different clans across America in everywhere you go. There's always a different clan. They're all not the same. Question, was Brown affiliated with a particular clan? Answer, yes, sir. What group was he involved in? Answer, the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Question, and what is special about the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan? Answer, they're known as a more paramilitary group than other clans, such as the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan of Harrison, Arkansas. Question, you also mentioned there's a group called the Aryan Nations. Answer, yes, sir. Could you describe a little bit more about that for the jury? The Aryan Nations is a Christian organization of the white supremacist movement. They're like the church. Most people who are members of the Aryan Nations believe in the Christian identity philosophy. So it goes on from there. That's where we're going to end this story because it was a lot. So it was. So it's a curious thing. I'm going to try and show a few things from other investigations I've had going on, but this is where I was left after this whole story. The questions I'm left with are: we still don't know how Tim Ballard knows this guy. We still don't know what exactly OUR, if they were using Banjo slash Safe AI, what they were, what OUR was doing with this software. What was it actually capable of doing? How much of the claims that they have made over the years about how many people they've rescued, about how they've done these operations, how much of it was actually just selling other people on software like aerial recovery or like this Banjo software, regardless of whether or not it actually works, and getting paid on the side. How much money is changing hands here as official elected politicians like Sean Reyes and activists running supposedly nonprofit organizations like Tim Ballard, who were already getting paid pretty well, both of them, frankly, more than they deserved, you ask me. But getting paid very well, and then on the back end, how much of this is making money changing hands? Just selling people on software and selling each other on performative enhancements to a system that's doing very badly, frankly, at curbing the amount of violence against children that actually exists in the world. And these guys go out there and they sell Jordan Peterson and Chris Williamson and freaking who else, Joe Rogan, probably, all these podcasters and celebrity conservatives and podcasters and personalities that, listen, we're out here doing the real work, but the deep state. And then they start dog whistling all these well-known anti-Semitic tropes. Now, I'm no fan of what's being done in the Middle East right now by anybody. But I hate anti-Semitism, man. I hate it, and it just drives me nuts to think how it has become. You can just say it and just pretend like it's not, pretend that it's not what it obviously is. And then on the response from the Anti-Defamation League, for example, they turn around and say, well, any criticism of the state of Israel is criticism. Is dog whistling as well. And it's like, wait a second. That's obviously not true. Okay, a state is a state. And any state, no state is above scrutiny. Any state that's above scrutiny, if we say that about the American government, anybody says that about the American government, even the most patriotic American's going to go, well, I don't know about that. I mean, there's not everything they do is, we know they'll do some pretty wild things, right? We have a distrust about our government, and that distrust is built, I think, into the actual history, the propaganda, the story of America. That you should distrust your government, you should be suspicious of their motives, and you should dig into public officials' use of their time. Like I said, the day that judgment got passed down from a Utah court that said that Annie Knox can get access to all of any public officials' calendars if you're using state assets to, like, computers and devices, to schedule these meetings. She can get to it because she's a journalist. That's what the law says. That very day, the state legislature passed a law saying, yeah, that's no longer true. And the very day after that, Spencer Cox, who's pretty new governor at the time, signed it into law. And Spencer Cox's calendar was specifically blocked from that point on, so that journalists couldn't get access to it. And it was like, wow. Because whatever you think, it's shocking what Sean Reyes and other, particularly what Sean Reyes was up to with his calendar, what his calendar shows. It's been just a plain public knowledge that from Governor Herbert down to Governor Cox, it's so much worse in the governor's mansion. The governors in this state have been so corrupt, especially since Herbert. Now, there's always a level of corruption that you should anticipate is happening especially at the state level. But it's the swamp. Yes, it is a swamp. Yeah, it is a swamp. But ironically, it's people who cry swamp who are the biggest swamp creatures of all, generally speaking. How much of this gets up to Spencer Cox's office? I have a picture I didn't load here at Silicon Slopes, which is frankly a hotbed of this kind of activity, of basically backdoor deals with government agents and software companies and corporations and banks and venture capitalists and all these guys changing money, behind closed doors. And meanwhile, shady crap is going on. And, it's happening in front of everybody's faces. And here in Utah, you put this fancy logo on it. It's not even that fancy, frankly. No offense to whoever made that logo. It says Silicon Slopes. Oh, we're bringing jobs to Utah, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out it's just out in front of everybody's face. There's money changing hands here all the time. Your tax dollars are part of it. And meanwhile, the police can take this device and turn it on in your neighborhood. They have they can start collecting data from everybody's cell phones. And they know it. And they passed a law that basically does next to nothing to actually stop it. This is my opinion as I've looked into it and read it. And people go to jail. People go to prison. In this case, like this woman I was talking about earlier, I haven't read deeply into her story, but from the surface read of this woman's story, this woman was convicted of murder and didn't pull a trigger. Doesn't appear to have done anything other than make a wisecrack about, well, I wish somebody would, and then somebody did. Her son, allegedly. I mean, in that case, I guess we can say that he did it because he's been convicted. But it's like, but now she has too. And it's like, and then how are they going to sell us when Sean Reyes paid $21 million that he had to rescind to get his friend a contract and doesn't have any idea. There's apparently not, at least not enough vetting of the contractors to be able to say, this guy, when he was 17, shot up at least one synagogue and graffitied another one and worked with the Klan to target groups, an ethnic group that he was born into, and then has gotten away with all of his life being in positions of high trust. including collecting a position where he taught himself how to code allegedly, and created all these patents, government provided patents, on how to collect everybody's information and track where you are all the time and what you think and what you're taking pictures of and what you're taking videos of, and then promises, no, don't worry, we're encrypting all that information, we're deleting it unless the AI flags an event. It's something that even at the end of the day, what ends up canceling the Banjo contract permanently, as far as I understand it, is that it wasn't even true. They did the AI was it didn't even work. And so, and I again, I was reading. I'll show you this article. This is the Vice article. Okay, I said do it, and then you do it. I hate this software. This is a Vice article. Okay, because I thought this was interesting. I thought it was interesting and weird. Okay, and this brings back, by the way, something that you may have noticed if you were paying attention in 2016. Is something here should catch your attention really fast. Okay. The news signifies an abuse of data by a government contractor. This is the article from Vice. With Banjo going far beyond what companies which scrape social networks usually do, Banjo created a secret company named Pink Unicorn Labs. According to 3 former Banjo employees, with 2 of them adding that the company developed the apps. That was done to avoid detection by social networks, 2 of the former employees said. Okay. This should immediately call up to your mind Cambridge Analytica. You remember this? If you know, you know. Create a secret company called Pink Unicorn Labs. And watch this. 3 of the apps created by Pink Unicorn Labs were called One Direction Fan App, EDM Fan App, and Formula Racing App. Motherboard found these 3 apps on archive sites and downloaded and analyzed them, as did an independent expert. The apps, which appear to have been originally compiled in 2015 and were on the Play Store until 2016, according to Google, outwardly had no connection to Banjo, but an analysis of its code indicates connections to the company. The aspect of Banjo's operation has some similarities with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, with multiple sources comparing the 2 incidents. Banjo was doing exactly the same thing, but more nefariously, arguably, a former Banjo employee said, referring to how seemingly unrelated apps were helping to feed the activities of the company's main business. Motherboard granted 4 employees and another source close to the company anonymity because they had signed non-disclosure agreements with Banjo. I think that's all that really matters there. Oh no, let's look at this real quickly. The company has not publicly explained how it specifically scrapes social media apps. Motherboard found the apps developed by Pink Unicorn Labs included code mentioning signing into Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Russian social media app VK, Foursquare, Google Plus, and Chinese social network Sina Weibo. And then they show a picture of the EDM fan app. Okay. There are several ways these apps could have scraped social media, perhaps by sending the saved login token to a server for Banjo to use later, or by using the app itself to scrape information. But it is not totally clear which method Banjo used because the API that the apps connected to is no longer live. Motherboard found that the apps, when opened, made web requests to the domain pewlapie.com, likely referring to Pink Unicorn Labs. But the site had, but the site that would provide a response to the app is currently down. One of the former employees said they saw one of the apps when it was still working and it had a high number of logins. It was all major social media platforms, they added. The particular versions of the apps Motherboard obtained when opened asked a user to sign in with Instagram. Business records for Pink Unicorn Labs show the company was originally incorporated by Banjo CEO Damien Patton. Banjo employees worked directly on Pink Unicorn Labs projects from Banjo's offices, several of the former employees said, though they added that Patton made it clear in recent years that Banjo needed to wind down Pink Unicorn Labs' work and not be linked to the firm. There was something about Pink Unicorn that was important for Damien to distance himself from, another employee told Motherboard. I always knew this moment would come. While I worked there, it felt like I was spying on the world. Before pivoting to artificial intelligence for governments, Banjo was a social media focused company offering an app that would show what was happening around a user based on posts from Twitter, Instagram, Foursquare, and other social networks. It then moved on to providing services to media companies, letting them know if something significant and perhaps newsworthy was breaking on social networks. Some similar companies like Data Miner have permission from social media sites to use large amounts of data. Twitter, which owns a stake in Data Miner, gives the firm exclusive access to its so-called fire hose of public posts. Banjo did not have that sort of access, so it created Pink Unicorn Labs, which one former employee described as a shadow company that developed apps to harvest social media data. They were shitty little apps that took advantage of some of the data that we had, but the catch was that they had a ton of OAuth providers, one of the former employees said. OAuth providers are methods for signing into apps or websites via another service, such as Facebook's Facebook Connect, Twitter's Sign In with Twitter, or Google's Google Sign In. These providers mean a user doesn't have to create a new account for each site or app that they want to use, blah, 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 blah. You know what they are. So that's what. So basically, it was exactly what Cambridge Analytica was, as I understand Cambridge Analytica in any event. So hate the software. In any event, so that's what's going on there. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It's like we live in a world where nobody watched movies from the 1990s. where Hollywood tried to warn us of exactly what's happening. In any event, I'm glad that Sean Reyes, my dad said to me recently, today actually, he said, do you ever think maybe you should say a thing that is positive? I said, well, you've never listened to any of my godless sermons. I didn't say that to him. But I said, I do a lot of work that's in the positive stuff. And then even when I do coverage of like weird stories like this one that involve a lot of really dark subjects, I try to put a positive and hopeful spin to it by including some other things that are of interest and what's meaningful about it. And but yeah, in any event, I do think that there is something to say for that. We can get so lost in like the true crime world. And I had this conversation, gonna reveal something that maybe I feel like I don't need to have asked permission to talk about this, since I'm mainly telling you what I had said. I had this conversation with Beth Magnetic. I don't know how many of you remember Mormon True Crime. I had this conversation with Megan Connor over at Third Verse, she doesn't love this description, but she is Lori Vallow's cousin, and she has covered a lot of true crime on her channel, especially related to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, which is all tied into this story too, frankly. You see it just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up and coming up for me. And I had said this, and I'd even had this conversation with Steve Pinecker at Mormon Book Reviews, in which he also used to do true crime content before he did book reviews and Mormon book related content. And there was a moment where, when I was talking to him in a private conversation, on a phone conversation that went really long, as Steve and I tend to do, where he almost seemed to have a little FOMO about the whole true crime podcast, that is the content that I was doing. And I was like, man, don't be. You know why you got out of it. And he immediately said, yeah, I do know. Because this kind of content, if you can't have a sense of humor about sorry. Because you're gay, this guy says. No, he is gay. But who isn't a little bit gay? No, because it brings down your soul. It brings down your heart to think about all the dark things that happen in the world, and why it piques our fascination to know that this world is made up of people who do really, really awful things. But thanks for the comment, guys. Yeah, there's always one. Anyway, but there are some things where I have found great meaning actually in covering true crime. Stories like this, it's a little harder to see. I had mentioned this, that I might bring this up because I was talking with my sister earlier. I'd asked her about, we were talking about some unrelated story, and I was like, hey, do you know about Kaylin Louder? And she said, and she's like, no, who was that? And I was like, I did a story on her. I'm sure I published it. And then I realized I never did publish it. And I'm like, I don't know that I have the actual story put together. I have the footage somewhere. And I thought I should look that up and see if I still have it. Because I had done a podcast episode with Heidi Love over at Unfiltered Rise, and her content. She's an ex-Mo Christian who actually does conspiracy theory content, and we actually became somewhat unlikely friends. And we started making content together. I would go on her program, she'd come on my program. And eventually it became it became toxic for her because she started getting weird threats and things from people. And according to her, they somebody shut down her computer. Somebody got access to her computer. Somebody shut down her account. She's now come forward public with this. She and I don't even talk really anymore. I'm not sure. I don't think that that's for any. I think that she's just trying to protect herself. She doesn't know who to trust, and I don't blame her. But it's like a lot of our content. There's a lot of this content about the Kaylin Louder story that I didn't get. As a result, I don't think there's actually an episode out there about this. Okay, 2024. I think I found the folder that it's in. But I was like, dang, it really does suck that that's not out there, because that was pretty good stuff. If you don't know, Kaylin Louder was a young woman who back in the early 2000 days became national news when she was found in the West Jordan River in Salt Lake. And I'm actually not finding the footage. Maybe let me look it up by her name. I may not be able to show the footage, but I'm thinking I will make a new episode that's just for Hellfire Agency with all this footage, because it was so fascinating, the story. So, You guys know that I did stories about Ted Bundy's victims, starting with Laura and Amy, and the who was found in 1974 in the American Fort Canyon, near where I lived at the time. And I had just done it because people were interested in my Tim Ballard stuff, and I felt like the Tim Ballard story had gone cold, and I wasn't getting lots of new information. I said, I'm going to go up to Ted Bundy's cave and just film up there and tell a story about this girl who was why people think that this is Ted Bundy's cave. Little quick snapshot, pretty broad consensus is that there is no Ted Bundy cave. There's no Ted Bundy basement, unless there is a possibility. I agree with my friend Chris, who actually went into the basement at the Pink Palace, at the house in the avenues where Ted Bundy lived. And after being in that basement, he is convinced Ted Bundy may have actually kept Melissa Smith and or Laura Amy and or Debbie Kent, at least for a short period of time, in that basement, actually going there and getting down into it. By the way, with family members of one of Bundy's victims, and the guy, Brian, what's his name? Sweet guy, who sold Bundy who bought Ted Bundy's Volkswagen in 1975, when Bundy was on parole, and got a duplicate registration because that vehicle was on, what do you call it? It was collateral against his bond to be released after he was arrested for the aggravated kidnapping of Carol Duranch. And so he basically sold the car twice. He put it up as collateral as part of the collateral to get a bond to be released on bond. And then he also took the duplicate title and sold it to this 17-year-old kid who was ecstatic that he could buy a cool Volkswagen Bug, which were hip and girls really liked it. Guy was actually a friend of Melissa Smith's, or a classmate of Melissa Smith's, and comes to find out later that she likely died in that car, and was carried to her final resting place in that car. And it was like crazy. That's also where they pulled up the floor panels and found all the hair, found all this brown hair. And that's why they wound up getting a warrant to exhume Laura Amy, who had been buried, the girl from the canyon, who had been buried down south further towards where I am now. Ironically, that's becoming a story in and of itself. Is this area is now becoming a hotbed of serious activity for the Lori Daybell cult, the whole Tom Harrison Visions of Glory cult. It's heating up with some crazy, wild content that's likely to get dangerous, I think, down here. And it all centers around Tim Ballard. And so look for more reporting on that. I've been collecting some information about that. And I may go up north a little bit here to record soon, to record a little information about some of the controversy that's rising out of that out down here. Anyways, but the I had been covering the story about Laura Amy, and a person contacted me when I had posted Laura's picture in an American Fork Facebook group. And somebody said, "Why are you asking questions about Laura Amy?" And I said, "Oh, well, I mean, I felt like I covered this in the post, but okay, to answer your question, I am a true crime podcaster apparently now. And I went to, and I'm trying to find any information people have about memories that they have about interacting with the investigators on Laura Amy's case, because we're trying to find out. And this is Chris Mortensen and I have been trying to find out for like 2 years what happened to all of the evidence that was collected in Laura Amy's case. And then all of a sudden this last month, by the way, because according to everything I know, according to everything he knew, there was no evidence. It was either thrown away or was never collected. And that pretty much was what Utah County Sheriff's Office what the people who were involved in it said from the beginning. But now there's a report out there that says there were at least 2 samples of DNA collected from Laura Amy that now that they've been able, the Utah crime, the forensics lab has been able to confirm, to the exclusion of all other people, show DNA from Ted Bundy. And it's like, freaking what? What are these 2 samples? What are, or at least 2 samples? It said a couple. The woman who was reporting on it was a true crime podcaster, and frankly did a pretty piss poor job explaining what they had collected. It's like, just give it to us. If it's gross, it's gross. Just give it to us. What did you have? Is it semen? Is it hair? Is it skins? Is it skin from under her fingernails? Is it blood? What is it? What is this DNA? You know, they pretty much have exonerated Ted Bundy on the murder of a woman in Moab because they found the DNA of a man who his girlfriend had confessed to the police that she knew that he had murdered this woman. And you know, the police there in Moab, with very little training, had taken made special effort to make sure to take that woman's clothes and all of her all the items that she had on her body at the time, including the ligature that was used to end her, and keep them in a sealed container box and put it in a building where it was sure to not be tampered with, and where they knew that it could be stored long term and in conditions where it wouldn't destroy any evidence, even though at the time, courts didn't really think that DNA worked, that DNA could actually tell you anything. And then an investigator out there, a good cop in Moab, found that box, went digging through, was trying to solve this cold case, and went digging and found this box and found this woman's clothes, and was able to use this woman's clothes to confirm Ted Bundy didn't kill her. Ted Bundy wasn't even in the area, as far as anybody knew. It was just so close to the time period when he was operating, within like a couple of years. It was so close to the time that he was operating in Utah that they're like, and it was so similar to his MO. Wasn't exactly his MO, but was similar enough because the guy had used this woman's pants to strangulate her. And but then they took these pants, turned them inside out, found the part where the guy would have grabbed it, took a patch of this thing, of these pants, sent it into the crime lab, and freaking 50 years later came back this other guy who was not Ted Bundy, a guy who was known to have been in the bar that night and had gotten angry with this woman because she'd beaten him at cards. And he was a regular in the local. And at one point, there was a point where his girlfriend, after a domestic violence situation with him, happened to blurt out to the police and say, you know, he's the guy who killed that woman in the bar. And they're like, what? And she's like, yeah, I know he was. He confessed it all to me. He's all beat up about it because he, and then they came back to investigate it a little while later. And she's like, oh, I just was angry. I shouldn't make him mad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. And they're like, if that were true about him, this isn't about him. This is about the family of this woman. And she's like, yeah, no, it isn't true. And she recanted the testimony on it. And now the DNA evidence confirms she was telling the truth the first time. But for years, they called it Blamed on Bundy. There's a whole podcast called Blamed on Bundy, where they just go over all of the things that people assume Bundy confessed to, or that, Bundy was convicted of, and it's not true. And in fact, they know it was somebody else. That there's reason to believe that it was somebody else. And it's like, this is why the truth matters. This is why good policing should start with, don't automatically assume that the police know what they're doing. Don't automatically assume that somebody's vetting. We should always be watchful enough to say, look, mistakes are going to be made. Human beings are human beings, or whatever. Can you validate for us? Is there training? Is somebody actually taking the time to find out whether or not these people know what they're doing? and what exactly are the systems that are being employed. If that had happened with this banjo crap, it's likely none of this would have ever happened. Anyway, this woman contacted me and there's out of response to this post I made in this American Fork Facebook group, and she had said, "Why are you following up on the story of Laura Amy?" And I said, there's a group of us, we're Bundy heads, sadly enough, who want to put this to bed. We want to know that somebody is actually investigating and has put to bed this story to make sure that everybody knows what we think we all know, which is that Bundy murdered this girl, 17-year-old Jack Mormon girl from Fairview, Utah. And she said, what do you know about Kaylin Louder? I said, well, who's Kaylin Louder? So she was a girl who was found in the West Jordan River in Salt Lake. I actually went to the grate. That's why I'm looking for this footage right now. I actually went to the grate where her body was found. She had been missing for 2 months since the police had found footage of her. Well, since her father had arrived at her apartment after she had gone missing, and people had noticed that she had been missing in Murray, Utah, and her family's from American Fork. The stories keep coming back to this place. It's an interesting place, American Fork. Also, the place, by the way, where the banner under heaven, that whole story, that's all American Fork. They made up a different town for the TV show. It's American Fork. And her father came up to Murray, which is just about 20 minutes away, really, on the freeway. Came up to find her dog outside her house and her purse set down on the ground, and her keys, if I remember correctly. And he called the police, and the police, after a disturbing amount of time, were able to come up with they produced the footage of the moment where she was last seen in the parking lot of this apartment complex. And she's seen in the footage that they released, she is seen talking to somebody off camera, and there's these features, these like boulder looking, hill looking, weird looking hills taller than a person. I know you're going to find out why I know how tall they are. Taller than me. Let's say that. It's taller than me. And she was not as tall as I am. She was, I think, 30. That's when she went missing. And she's standing there facing towards the backside of one of these mounds. And she's like talking and bending over and talking. And the police were selling it like this girl lost her mind. Which is weird because she was a therapist. She was a social worker who worked with, at the time she was working with troubled youth in a school meant specifically for boys who were troubled. That's not the proper term to use, I'm sure, but in any event, I'm just using the words as they come to me. Boys who had boys who were in trouble. Prior to that, she'd had a job just around the corner from that apartment at a place that provided therapy services, court-ordered therapy services for men who were found guilty of domestic violence. And she worked with men who were involved in domestic violence. And so it's like, this is a woman who had every reason to be worried that somebody might have found out where she lived. Okay. And she had called into the police at one point saying, I can hear people outside my window talking, and they're talking about doing something, to me. And she's like, and they're in the house. And the police, the 911 dispatch, they eventually released an edited version of the 911 phone call. And it's very clear that they didn't release the whole thing, that they had cut pieces of it out. And so this started in a lot of people who were following this case going, there's no way this woman starts ranting to nobody in the parking lot outside her house, outside her apartment. And this woman who is a therapist who, had just recently been, I guess she'd been fired from the school job where she was working. And she was working walking dogs to make ends meet until she could get another job. That's a whole part of the story I've been trying to dig into now for like a couple of years since this person dropped this on me. But she got into this. That she went from there over to the river, a stream that runs behind her apartment and runs to the West Jordan River. And interesting. Okay, Barry, you do the true crime thing, I see. That this tributary river or stream that runs behind her apartment complex gets into the river, the West Jordan River, that runs to Salt Lake, where she was found. And is that enough of that covers that story? Yeah, okay. So the story goes that was the way it was positioned by the police. They didn't show up for like an hour when she called 911. And that's what this all came down to. It seemed pretty clear to me. This is my opinion. The Murray Police Department, yeah. They didn't, the police department for her area didn't respond until much later. Her roommate, who didn't like her very much, they had some kind of beef, had said that she does this, she hears voices, and she thinks she hears people talking outside her window all the time. And she's, and maybe that could be people have auditory hallucinations. This is a normal thing. Sometimes it's attributed to miracles. It's attributed to angels and God in any event, or aliens or whatever. She goes out there, but she calls the 911, and they respond and tell her your doors are all locked from the inside, because that's what her roommate said. Then you go back and you find reporting from the area at the time, and it says in the articles at the time that the doors and windows in her apartment were found open, and that she was hiding out in her room. Which do you believe? In addition to that, getting into the true crime world and getting into like the forums, I'm trying to remember the name of the forum. Anyways, these forums where people track, true crime stuff. Somebody had said, so I found a post where somebody had said, why don't they mention the red car anymore? And I had run this by the person who'd flown this up my flagpole, saying, and I said, what do you know about a red car in the parking lot? And she's like, the red car that was chasing her around. I'm like, apparently the KSL article and this other article had mentioned the red car and her running from a person in a red car, and then eventually getting pushed, witnessing that they witnessed somebody pushing Kaylin into this car. And I said, now that all of that is gone. That's not in the articles. And she's like, that's crazy talk. I remember that. People were interviewed. There were witnesses who claimed they saw her yelling at somebody in a car and then getting pushed into a red car and then drove off. What was the process of redacting that story? Why don't they mention in these news articles that this has been updated to remove this content? I didn't see any of that. I'm like, that's okay. I'm not a conspiracy theory person. I used to say this on Heidi Love's show all the time. I'm not a conspiracy theory person, but if you don't want me to think that there's a conspiracy going on, you don't do shit like that. But this woman's story was changed posthumously as they didn't find her. Her parents went broke paying what happened to her, frankly. And they had been through a lot. And that's where the story gets deeper. It started with me looking at the actual physical location. I said, this place that she lived, it's right up the street in Murray. I took a Sunday, went up there about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I went to that parking lot. I went to Kaylin Louder's apartment. I walked in the door where her apartment is, not the door to her apartment, but walked into the hallway where her door is right there. As I was in this parking lot, again, I hope I'm not paranoid, but if you don't want me to be paranoid, don't do suspicious stuff. I walked in there. I was walking around filming just with my cell phone and just making little comments into my microphone, hoping nobody noticed. And as I did, people wearing plain clothes started. It gave me the creeps. I don't know. I probably imagined it, but people started following me. I'm not saying they're like part of a conspiracy. I think they were like part of some kind of security detail. And like they had somebody like on the grounds at all times to say, if some true crime person comes around filming this, for the sake of our tenants, tell them to fuck off or that you'll call the police or whatever. I'm sure that's all that it was. I'm sure that's all that it was. But I'm like, well, I got my footage. I'm out of here. So I went over there, and lo and behold, I went and I looked at that mound. Remember, I said that mound where she was talking to somebody to the thin air, according to the police. I went to that big mound and stood where Kaylin Louder stood and looked at where she was looking at. And the back side of this concrete mound is a grassy area that's very clearly designated as a place for you to take for this very dog-friendly community. I was surprised at how dog-friendly this area was. I'm like, to be honest with you, I could live here and like have dogs because like everybody has dogs there. And it was very clearly a place to take your dog out, take little pets out and have them go pee on this little grassy area without having to go out and find some place like down at the park or whatever. And then I turned around and I looked at the trash can that was visible. If I remember correctly, is actually visible in the security camera footage, and went over to that trash can, and it's one of these trash cans that has a center stem coming out through the center of it, and has a little dispenser there, and down that dispenser, poop bags for dogs. Kaylin Louder obviously was taking, and that was part of the thing from the police, and and the newspapers. Was why was this girl who grew up in American Fort, knows how cold Utah gets in the wintertime, without any shoes on, standing outside her apartment, talking to the thin air, wearing nothing but a tank top and some shorts. And I'm like, because she took her dog out to take a shit. Obviously. I mean, people have been saying this since she went missing, because she took her dog out to take a piss. And I'm like, totally. They've set her up. Between the police and the newspaper coverage, they set this story up so that they didn't have. I think this is my theory. So they didn't have to account for the fact that for 2 months this girl went missing, and it was so much like Laura Amy, the same time of year, same weird thing where she shows up. Somebody finds her in the river. Somebody found Laura Amy by the river in American Fort Canyon. It had been 2 months since Laura Amy had disappeared. She disappeared on Halloween night, was found Thanksgiving Day or the day before or after. That there's some, as I recall, there's some discrepancy on that. Why was her body so well preserved? Why was the medical examiner was convinced that she'd only been dead for a short period of time, et cetera. But so much about Kaylin Lauder and Laura Amy, it just like wound up the same. And the narrative, but this time the narrative was changed in the press to reflect something that made people that seems to be like it was meant to make people feel more reassured that the police had done everything they could to find her. And when come to find out, there's another 911 phone call where she complained that she could hear gunshots outside of her window in her apartment, and they say they went and investigated and said that there was a wedding in the what do you call it, like the commons in the and that some people had come out and either were like setting off noisemakers or fireworks or something, and that they must have heard that, but nobody else heard it that I know of. And I went out there and I looked at this facility. I'm not really sure how far the place was from Kaylin Lauder's place, but all of these patches of apartments, really townhomes is what they are. They're all set up in these different blocks and facing in different directions. And hers faces towards the outside of the whole campus where the river is that supposedly took her and carried her off into the West Jordan River, which I was able to walk to from her apartment. Okay, I had to get out. Okay, I'd gotten out of my car to go over to her apartment. Then people started these men started percolating around like it was not percolating. What's the word? They started mulling around like they were coming up to talk to me. And I just kind of went, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're like, "Hey," and I'm like, I gotta go. And I got in my car, drove around, got some footage to try and figure out what the route was to get to this river where supposedly Kaylin Lauder had run off, because she's in the footage. She's sitting there shouting at nobody, supposedly, very clearly. But if you look at it at the footage, which has no audio, interestingly, she's very clearly talking to her dog, who and trying to get her dog to poop. I was like, you just blah, 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 blah. Hey, come on, let's go, blah, 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 like that. And then she suddenly looks away and then takes off running. And in the newspaper footage from back when she went missing, witnesses said that they saw her going from car to car, hiding behind cars as a car started following her around, and that they eventually saw somebody push her into that car. Now the narrative the correlated narrative was, we think that she probably got over into the stream on the outside, that she's started seeing things and hearing things, and that she went over to the stream behind the complex, and she must have somehow gotten caught up in this stream that flows to the West Jordan River. And so I went and parked my car outside the complex on the public street. Now that I people may at least be watching to see, am I creeping out their tenants? And I totally get it. Like it was a creepy thing to do, but I had to know. And sorry for being creepy. And I went to that river and I followed it, that stream behind the house. I went on foot and I followed it. Boom, 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 boom. And it goes through this really cute, dog-friendly park with these dog walks that go through it, and then the stream. And that stream, in parts, was like shallow enough that I could step through it without getting my socks wet. I went to the deepest part that seemed to me like you could get swept up in and carried off. I went to the deepest part of that I could find in that area, going back and forth. I spent most of the day going back and forth on this river, trying to figure out where could you fall in and get carried away in a current strong enough to get to carry your body, where there are people all around, carry your body over to the West Jordan River. And I went out and I stood I had set up my camera on my monopod, right? That has a little tripod set up. Set it up and said, "This is the river." I had recorded. I'm like, "This is the river at the place roughly where it said that Kalen Louder must have fallen in and been carried away." And I found the deepest part of this stream that I could find. I filmed myself walking out into that stream up to mid calf on my leg and stood there like this and said, "I don't know. I have my doubts." Then I walked from there over to the place where the river was. And I found it. What I did find interesting is that there is a dog walk. That dog walk that I was talking about that goes to the park goes underneath the street. Because that was the other thing, is that how did she end up crossing the street, a busy street, in this stream to get fed into this river with nobody noticing? I did notice that there is a walk. That dog walk has a tunnel that takes you down underneath the street at one point and takes you over into Taylorsville. And just a few, I mean, honestly, not that far from where Kalen Louder lives, you can walk to the West Jordan River pretty easily, especially if you're young and fit, which she seemed to be. And at that time, she was walking dogs for money. And she goes and she walks over to, I walked over to the Jordan River, to the West Jordan River. And I had gone over, and there's a bridge there that crosses over the river. I was like, oh. But the bridge has these like tall rails. It's not impossible to jump from it, but I would think it was very difficult to fall. So I said, maybe it's a jumping thing. Maybe Kalen jumped. Maybe she lost her mind. Maybe lost her mind. Like I said, you don't have to have lost your mind to get to a breaking point. She had lost her job. She had problems like anybody had problems. She had called the police twice. She'd called 911 and been basically told to stop making frivolous 911 phone calls because she was obviously losing her mind, according to the police. Maybe she looked around and said, maybe this isn't worth it. So I said, maybe Kalen jumped. So I went over and to this bridge and looked down in it. Now, mind you, this is over a decade later. But I looked down into that river and I filmed this and I said, not only is this river, yeah, it's deep enough that you could get carried away. But not only is it difficult to get to from the bridge, but as I filmed, as I looked over the railing, I said, you tell me I'm crazy here, but that river's flowing the wrong way. And so I looked it up on Google and couldn't find a good answer on it. But apparently, but I remember looking up on ChatGPT, and I just don't know that I believe it. But ChatGPT, I'd looked it up on, and I'm like, what do I told it, do a search. And this is 2 years ago when ChatGPT was even worse than it is now. And I said, do a search about the West Jordan River changing direction. Like, I mean, is that a thing? Does it change direction seasonally? And it said, yeah, it does actually, during the winter, it flows one direction, and during the summer, it flows a different direction. But I was recording that in November, which was roughly the same time of year. Number one. Number two, I don't know that I buy it. I don't think that's true. I don't see how anybody could have fallen in to this river and accidentally ended up way up north in Salt Lake with the flow of the water. You'd have to drag them to it, or they'd have to swim to it. Unless I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I got back in my car and I drove up to the place where Kalen Louder's body was found, and I filmed in front of it. And there was all this debris it's like a canal. Up at that point, it's basically a canal. And I was like, there's all this garbage, and all of this like reeds and stuff growing up in it. Now, there was a plaque there saying that it had been renovated recently and they'd done a bunch of abatement of the wildlife in the area. That was this, a community project to clean the place up. I'm like, so maybe it was, and right around the time when Kaylin Lauder went missing. So or was found, I should say. And I was like, okay, so maybe the whole landscape was totally different, over 10 years ago. But I believe, looking at the way that it is now, that a body flowed from Taylorsville up to here with this water going the wrong way down there. Up there, it looked like it could be, but the water was mostly just sitting, just still. And I just like, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. On the other hand, I walked around to the other side where of the grate where Kaylin's body was found. And I walked right up to the edge and said, here's the place where you could easily pull off, especially if it were like late at night, pull off of this highway, this road, and push somebody into the river and leave them, get back in your car and take off. And there are no traffic cameras in that area. And I went, especially because then I got back into my car. You want to talk about, at this point, all theories are plausible at this point, right? I got back in my car and drove down. I want to say, like, if my memory serves, it was something like 5 or 6 miles to the address of the place where Kaylin Lauder had worked when she was working with men who were convicted of domestic violence. And so that's how it started, right? I spent like a lot of time working on this case. And then I went into her brother. Kaylin Lauder had a twin brother. His memory escapes me now. This is like over a year since I did this story. She had a twin brother with whom, biological twin. I don't know that has to be mentioned, but she's got his half of his DNA split and her DNA split is very similar, right? They were fraternal twins. But whatever, yeah. Her brother, it seems that part of the reason why Kaylin Lauder went into mental health services was that her brother had very serious schizophrenia and he would hear things. And he would, in some stories, I found a story posted on YouTube, if I remember correctly, from her sister, who had given a project at school down in American Fork about how smoking pot had ruined her brother, or ruined his life. And she said that he would smoke pot back when he was about 17. He would hang out, and she remembers her mother holding him as he would rant to her about the people he could see through his window, staring at him when there was nobody there. And that she's like, obviously marijuana ruined my brother's life and ruined his mental health and drove him to do the things that he did next. Okay, but that's not what pot does. Okay, this is a teenager. This is a child who's a Mormon, presumably. From what I understand, the Lauders are all Mormons, and I'm not shaming anybody for this, but that's very much a Mormon teenager's understanding of what smoking pot does. Nobody sees weird shit out their window, as far as I know. But her brother did smoke a lot of pot. When boys get schizophrenia, have a psychotic break, it is not uncommon. It is actually, as I understand it, from my research, it's more common than not for boys to get schizophrenia, to have a psychotic break around the time they're about 14, around adolescence. And something about, it seems like the hormonal change, from what I understand, that happens around puberty causes the psychotic break, whatever the predisposition to his schizophrenia is. With a lot of boys, they start hearing things when they're around puberty. And at the time, that was part of the reason why people had thought for a long time that women couldn't get schizophrenia, that girls didn't get schizophrenia. That was only, just like autism, it was a thing that only happened to boys because they didn't know how it showed up in women. Because they only studied boys, because the boys were the problematic ones, generally speaking. Kaylin's twin brother started experiencing auditory and visual hallucinations. Visual hallucinations are not very common, frankly, with any mental illness, but they do happen. And apparently, according, at least if his sister's to be understood, his other sister, he did see things or claim to. And he heard voices. It's like, well, okay. Is that just a convenient thing for the police to say Kaylin heard voices, that she lost her mind, that she was but then you have the story about they made up this detail about her ranting to nobody when she was very clearly talking to her dog, and they had clipped out the parts where you could see the dog, the parts of the video where you would have seen the dog, who was very clearly in that little grassy, dog poopy hill area. It's like, it's too sus. I don't want to be a conspiracy theory person, but then don't do suspicious shit, man. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. And so this young man, his story is very sad. Just gonna warn you that off the bat and then tell it to you really quickly. Kaylin Louder's twin brother eventually got really messed up in drugs. He had an uncle down in, I want to say, Spanish Fork or Springville area, Utah County, southern Utah County, that he got into a tussle apparently over drugs. Like, if my understanding is correctly, it was either meth or I think it was meth. And so it wasn't, so not pot, this whole gateway drug thing is, anyways, it distorts people's perspective of how drugs work, and that really hurts the ability to find out what actually happened. He got into a tussle with his uncle apparently over drugs. He pulled out a gun and killed him, and he went away for murder. I think he pleaded guilty to get a reduced sentence after so many years. I think it was after so much time, Kaylin was gone. She had passed. And recently after she had passed, I want to say it was due to COVID. I think it was due to the pandemic. I don't remember the exact details, but basically he qualified for parole. And he qualified to get released on parole and from prison, obviously. And then he couldn't hack it on the outside world. And so he did himself in. And part of that was apparently that the schizophrenia had really gotten so bad, and he couldn't treat it. He couldn't find a way to treat it properly, and apparently he'd gone back to using. Which seems to me, armchair psychologist, yes, I admit, like he was self-medicating. And it's like, if that happened to her twin brother, what's the likelihood that that could have happened to Kaylin? That at least there might be something to say for her hearing things outside her window, people talking about her, or things like that, that those were hallucinations. And paranoia, which is a common symptom in schizophrenia. It's not exclusively. There are people who have schizophrenia and don't have that. And we don't know what we don't know. Come to find out, in the years since Kaylin passed, a new study that came out of the UK shows that they consider it now highly plausible that they didn't know this before because they weren't researching schizophrenia in women nearly as much. They weren't using, they didn't know what to look for in women to diagnose them for schizophrenia. But they came up with some research that shows that there's a kind of estrogen. Estrogens it's not just estrogen, but there are estrogens. There is an estrogen that they believe actually enrobes enrobes the neurons or something in the brain. It's in some way it actually protects your brain from psychosis. And so and that appears to conform with data that shows that shows that when they see psychotic breaks in women who have a family history of schizophrenia, they don't see it until perimenopause. And Kaylin was like about 30, I think, if I remember correctly, which is pretty young in perimenopause, but it is considered perimenopause. It could be considered perimenopause. And so new data shows us it may be plausible that Kaylin did suffer from the same illness as her brother and was probably unmedicated for it, because when these psychotic breaks happen, especially for women, nobody's looking for them, really, is my understanding anyways. And again, I'm not a psychologist or whatever, but did Kaylin lose her mind? Or did she experience a psychotic break or a paranoia break? And the answer is it's very possible. Did she suddenly run off and abandon her dog, whom she loved, and her purse and her keys and her whole life, to go wander or wander downstream from the stream to upstream, anyway, on the river? It's possible, yeah. In the cold in November, I think it was, in her t-shirt, in a tank top and shorts and no shoes. Yeah, from what I could see about Kaylin Louder, yeah, I buy it. She grew up in American Fork. People up in northern Utah are crazy about cold, man. They go out, especially the girls. I know you'll notice they go out in tank tops in the cold all the time. They do it all the time, and it wasn't that cold that day. Could it be that, as the police say, the river, the stream and the river were both much higher because of recent seasonal rain? Yeah, maybe. Does schizophrenia account for all of this eventually ending up with Kaylin in the river? It's totally plausible, but to be blunt with you, I'm just not convinced. If it weren't for the fact that it was so much easier for me to drive from the place where Kaylin Louder was said at one point in the news coverage to have been pushed into a car, and drive from there to the place where she had worked with men who were convicted of domestic violence, to the place where her body was eventually found. So much easier, more direct, and very plausible, and very plausibly could happen than any route I could have found walking along the dog path over to where the police think that she fell into the river. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry, but it's like, I can admit it's plausible, and I don't have enough facts and information to say what happened. But with the boots on the ground analysis, it looks to me like Kaylin Louder may have been murdered and stashed at the place where they found her. And that my main questions that came out of that were that I couldn't seem to find. First of all, I couldn't seem to find the place where she was actually, and I think that's just because I had a bad address for it, or they had changed, they'd moved addresses. I couldn't find the actual school where she had been working as a counselor and had recently been let go. I couldn't get definitive answers actually on who all was involved in the place where she was working, or what what complaints they had against her or she had against them when she had stopped working there. I couldn't find, and I don't know why it was that I struck off on this theory. I don't remember what it was. That it was the place where she had been working with men with convicted of domestic violence, was a treatment, what do you call it, inpatient treatment facility. And the place where I went to, and granted it had been 10 years since, looked like a strip mall practically, and not a place where you would have facilities for somebody to sleep overnight. And maybe I went to the wrong place. Now I'm looking back on it, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I remember walking over and going past this intersection again and again and again and again and again and again, parking and getting out, walking around, looking for a place. First of all, looking for a place where a person could end up in the river, because there's on the map, on the Google Maps, there's a blue line that feeds into the river right behind the place where that says that this facility was that she had worked in. And I'm like, maybe somebody took her to the office. Maybe they took her to the place where she used to work, or maybe she ran there hoping to find somebody who would help her, somebody who knew her. Maybe she got pushed into a car and then, got out, managed to break out and then ran to the nearest place where she knew somebody, and then, got into a tussle there, and ended up in the river. And I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find any place in the current infrastructure where it could have happened. And I'm like, I don't know, man. But I just don't buy it so far. So then the other thing becomes, were there people who had a motive to do Kaylin Louder in? And that's where that story really kind of seems to fall apart, because everybody loved Kaylin Louder. Now, maybe that's just a thing that people say because she's gone now. The only things I could find, I dug deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole of what were the motives of anybody might have to kill her. And I could not find any. I could not find a one. And so the more I dug into it, the more I found, what I found was there was a tribute to her posted by a friend of hers who was apparently a roommate, and on YouTube. And it had very few views. I'm not sure how it had. I think I discovered it on one of these true crime forums. And I went and I watched it, and there's this slideshow of her, and she's this Mormon girl from American Fork, right? And in all the pictures, she's wearing tank tops, spaghetti straps, shorts, things that you don't normally see Mormon girls wear. And I thought, okay, this is not your conventional Mormon girl. Like Laura Amy, weirdly enough, her story appears to have been one of a Jack Mormon girl. And okay, cool. And she's always surrounded by men in these pictures. And I brought this slideshow up to this friend of hers who had contacted me asking me if I would look into Kaylin's story. And I'm like, did you see this slideshow? Somebody did a tribute to her. It was a friend of hers. And she's like, that guy was her best friend. He was a GBF. He's gay. And that's where I was like, okay. I mean, I could have guessed from the photos, but yeah. And she's like, all the men in these photos, were any of them boyfriends? And she's like, oh gosh, no. She's like, all those guys were gay. They were men that she lived with. And I'm like, in that townhouse? She said, no, it was this other house on the other side of town that she had lived in when she left her parents' house in a bit of a huff. I don't know what the wording she used was. Her parents didn't, her parents loved her, obviously, but they didn't approve of her lifestyle, which makes it sound like she was gay. I don't think, I don't know. I don't think I ever found out or even asked anything about her sexuality, but she did have boyfriends. I know that much. But I don't think she had one at the time. But because I looked that up, that much I did look up. I'm like, what's the chances this is intimate partner violence? And it seemed pretty consistent. She hadn't been dating for a while. And so I looked at it, and she's like, And she said the thing is that she had this best friend, I think in high school. They hit it off. He wasn't loved. He felt alienated in the Mormon community. The only way he could get out of his situation down there in Utah County to save his life, frankly, was to, move into housing with other gay people. And she made so many friends of his friends that she decided to move in with them. And she lived surrounded by these people, and they just like partied and drank and, and smoked weed and stuff. And all these images, these pictures are just pictures of her partying with these friends of hers. And it's so very clear that they just so very much love her. And they're all gay dudes, just loved her, who just loved her. And then she eventually moves into her own place, or moves into a place with a roommate over in Murray. And that's where things eventually go wrong. And it just doesn't make any sense. So Heidi Love had asked me at the end of our podcast episode that we had done. This was like a year ago. And I think it's been taken down now off of Unfiltered Rise. But she had asked me, she's like, so what's your assessment at the end of the day? And I said, at the end of the day, I guess my assessment, if I had to choose, and I don't, is I guess she did fall into the river. But it stupidly does not make sense to me. It just doesn't seem like the most plausible answer. It's just the one that has the most evidence for me, until I can figure out who had a motive. And every person I talked to, and I talked to a few people who knew Kaylin, and the answer, and again, the answer came up again and again. I'm like, I would ask, did she have an old boyfriend who might want to have done her in, or a partner? No, gosh, no. The only thing I came up with that I heard that came close to it was a person who had said there was a guy who lived downstairs from her, or either downstairs or upstairs from her. I was like, okay. And this guy was always bitching at her for something or another, and didn't like her for some reason. And she would always complain to me about how this guy is scary, and she doesn't understand him because he had an accent or something. And he seems, and that he was one of the voices that she could hear outside her window, saying things that sounded like they were meant to be threats against her. And I'm like, at the same time, that's the kind of thing that happens with people with psychotic breaks, is they hear voices of people, at least according to what I understand. That's very common, to hear voices that seem familiar to you, saying things that are meant to make you feel embarrassed or feel threatened. Those are very common, as I understand it. Very common auditory hallucinations for people with schizophrenia. I'm like, so once again, I'd wind up with this situation of, I don't know. Anyways, so I left it at, and I told her friend this. I said, this is where I'm probably going to end up leaving this story for now. Unless I can find somebody who knows Kaylin Louder's client list at that facility where she would consult with men who were accused of domestic violence. Unless I know somebody who knows about the relationship she had with people there, or with the people or persons who ran that office, which it was a therapist's office. So I guess I'm saying the therapist that she was working under there, and what her relationship with him was. Or what does she know? If anybody has any good information on what happened to cause her to either lose her job at the school she had been working at recently, or to cause her to or if there was any kind of problems that she had with a student or with a member of the faculty there, or if there was an intimate partner or somebody, or a family member, somebody that she had pissed off, or that she had or that had pissed her off, or whatever. or if anybody knows more about the details of what happened with this upstairs neighbor at the apartment complex, is either upstairs or downstairs neighbor at the apartment complex, which I did while I was there. I did see that there was like a ground floor that was visible through a grate, an underground floor. Because what it was is that like one level of the apartment complex was raised up above the other one, and the one that's raised up back here facing out towards the perimeter is the parking lot where Kaylin, drove off. And then the other one down on the bottom level, you probably can't see it. Anyways, but the one on the other side of the townhomes is where you would access the yards and or garages in alternating, patterns like they do with townhomes. And so, and as I understand it, if I remember correctly, hers, she had a patio on the back side of the house. She had like a little yard. And I went over and around, and I do remember peeking at it and saying, if that gate were locked, I'd have a hell of a time getting back there, unless I could get down. And I don't remember if it was like the fire escape or coming up. Like it was something to do with fire escape, I want to say. I gotta find this footage, man. I remember looking and going, if that gate were locked, you couldn't really get in there without making a scene, without making a ruckus that I would think people would notice, unless you are already inside the building. And so again, I just don't know what I don't know on this. And then who knows the witnesses? I would like to know I would love to find out if anybody knows the witnesses who gave testimony that they saw Kaylin running through the parking lot, hiding behind cars, being chased by somebody in a car. If I remember, it's a red car, which is part of what creeped me out about it, because when I showed up in 2024, no, 2025, this is last year. Yeah, 2025, I was driving a red car. It was a car that wasn't made until after Kaylin was gone. I swear, I didn't know who this person was. And so then people started following me, and I'm like, oh well, this doesn't look sus at all. And like I say, I don't go for a conspiracy theory, but if you don't want me to think a conspiracy theory thought about you, don't do suspicious shit. All right, anyways, so that's where I left it. But I found the footage somewhere on my hard drive just the other day and went, dang it, this was really good. I'm surprised that I never actually came out with anything with it. Anyways, so that's the long and short of the story. That's our long episode. Sorry if I rambled quite a lot this time, you guys. This story about this guy Weirdbeard, it threw me for a loop, and I wound up reading a lot more than I ended up talking about here. But anyways, we're the Church of Horror. There'll be updates coming up soon, it seems. In the ex-Mormon world, there's a lot going on right now. It seems like something's going to have to be said. I feel like something's going to have to be said on my part, whether or not it's a usual programming episode, about Chief Mitiga, who now with his branch of peace is going aggressive about claiming all these other Mormon churches that have snubbed him, not just the Brighamite Church, the mainstream LDS Church, he feels slighted by them. And now he's claiming to speak that his new authority, now that he has been alienated by his band, by the band that had taken him on apparently as a headman, and I don't really understand what all that means, but has now denounced him. Now he claims he speaks for the Maya, who are my people. David. I don't feel like that is. I'm not threatening anybody, but I don't feel like that is a way to not get my attention. I don't think he's doing it to get my attention. I think he has another community out there who probably don't know about his history or don't care. And the more I've been looking into his associates in the Brian Nettles type community of Mormons, excuse me, the more it seems plausible that there are a handful of people who are continuing to support this work and will just move him from one indigenous community to another, or support him as he goes from one indigenous community to another, running this same false prophet grift. And I would be content to say, if he's not hurting anybody, then who cares? But misrepresenting the indigenous community's history and trying to convince them that their story is contained in the Book of Mormon, I can't let it slide. And if he's bringing it to the Maya community, if he really is working in Mexico with these communities, I don't see how I let that go and don't get involved. I try to be very peaceful and loving about it, but I'm not going to just let it go. So, stay tuned. That may become a thing soon. The Kai Schwimmer thing's definitely going to come to a head, though, by the way, in the near future. Which, weirdly enough, I'll tell you this much. Watch this space. Kai Schwimmer, the Paul brothers, Hayden and Jackson Paul, and Tim Ballard. I'm watching it. If you want a rabbit hole to go down, I'd suggest you go down that rabbit hole. And if you find something interesting, let me know. Let's get more money than God. Now let's get the Age of Reason. The Age of Reason. Love your faces. Flash bright, and I'll see you on Friday. I got a good show I'm putting together for you.
After the night of faith dawns our revolution. Rebels in an age of doubt took hold of our evolution. Harness the elements, tame the gods of thunder, cast off the slave's chains, look up with wonder. Born into the age of reason, with hearts that grow and heal, we can build our tomorrow with minds that know and feel. Rise against tyrants, rise from bended knee. Dawn the age of reason, we choose to be free. We choose to be free. We can map the distance spiral, count the beating of the heart, tap the wonder of nature, refine the healer's art. Star stuff that found a voice, we lift up one another. We're the science of the stars, save our sacred minds. be free.